Yeah, I was gonna ask if any of the players could confirm that they were able to type in the chat, but that does confirm it for me. So while we wait for people to trickle in, what to do? Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking we gonna give a second. Hold on, Swan. Let's give a second to let people a little see if some more people trickle in real quick before we bring people to the stage. I'd say
Mm-hmm.
just to give it a second. As far as we can discuss some general things that we may have, or if y'all have any things y'all might want answered in the chat, you can say it there. We'll
Bring it
answer
forth
if
as
we
well.
can. Yes.
We've also kind of split this up a bit. We have to keep it more distinct in the recording that's going to be posted later, as well as ensuring anyone who is able to answer the questions y'all bring forth is here. And we have decided that all of the realism questions will be taken at a later time, not just any other time, but still this time, but in a while until Tinker specifically is able to get here.
I think one of the main things that I know I wanted to cover as a general topic, um, I think we should be good to start on at least that much. Wouldn't you say,
Mm-hmm.
10? Um, in general, as far as mods go for both the semi-realism and the realism server, um, we do have mods that we have already tested and are, ready for queuing whenever we do our next mod vote, which I believe we'll be doing one soon this month, as soon as we get them all worked out and lined up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing I will mention is as far as the realism server goes, with how the realism server acts and how dinos can be managed with their profiles instead of saying, oh, well, it's too overpowered or broken for the server. With realism profiles, it does allow us to soft nerf them in a way. So if one or two of a certain dino isn't that big of an issue, and they're something that can be grouped up to four or more, using the group profiles for them, we can minimize that. So mods that we may have said in the past were too broken due to just their overall power as a solo and the fear of making them into groups, we can kind of nerf that with their profiles in the future. So, one that I know was requested a lot, which we will definitely need to go back and look over again just to make sure it's still up to date with what we feel is comfortable for the servers, is Dinosuchus. I know a couple people have spoke about how um the Sachi can grab about the same amount as a Deinosuchus can, and they're very similar. It's just one is a fully aquatic and one is semi-aquatic. But with profiles, it does allow us to tweak that if it does turn out to be something that is still good as far as the mod quality goes. If it's something we can fix, we can go ahead and look at it. Um, as far as any realism fantasy mods or just mods in general, if you have suggestions, for any that can be any that have been come out or we haven't looked at or spoken about recently. Some off the top of my head is like uh the Spear Crest. That with Spear Crest is a modded one, which I think is something we can look into. A few of the other high fantasy ones. I think there's a moose modded. I call it moose. It has like a moose look to it, but it's a fancy one. Yeah, the Cerataspida or whatever it is. If you have suggestions for those, go ahead and or anything similar, let us know. Um, that way we can work on testing them and just being overall covering on those. I think that's as much as I got for mods and
Hmm.
stuff like that. Uh, Falls,
But
as far as the well, Tandy, you got something.
no, I was gonna say if we were gonna begin answering questions, and I think fonts is a very good question to begin with. So you can keep on going, Nexus.
So that was all. That was as far as the mods go for both servers. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and start on the questions that we can see here. So Falls, you're asking what's our plan for saving the semi-realism server, and if we're going to be more focused on realism. Our goal is not to prioritize one over the other. We want to be able to grow both of them at the same time. The realism server has been in works for a while now, and we felt that it was a good time to bring it out and give players opportunities to try a realism as well as if they wanted to keep semi realism, they could play but either or both if they wanted. But we're not going to prioritize one or the other. Just like how we still doing events on the semi realism server, and we're trying to maintain activity there the best we can. As far as ways to save it, we are working on some of the things y'all have suggested to us to boost player count as well as we are trying to I think I could be wrong. Elite's not here, I don't believe. But we are I think advertising our server on various platforms. I know we are doing it on TikTok. I think maybe Reddit. The rest I'm unsure. But we're doing that and also again, anything y'all have been saying were as far as criticisms or stuff you think we could work on to change, we've been working on those as well. Some have already gone into effect, others have not yet. But we are doing wanting to do whatever we can to bring both both servers up. If we can get semi realism back up to what it was, great. If we can get both servers up to great pop, wonderful. Um, it is an effort on both ends of the coin, so it's going to take effort from both staff and also players. And in the sense of the players, like us taking your criticism and us doing things to help better the server in that sense.
Hmm. Do we have any other questions? Imperial asked a quick one. Why the main server is dead and why is there a new one called Fantasy? Um, to quickly answer, the new one that is called Fantasy is the realism one. The full name is Fantasy Realism, but we're working on tweaking it so the full name is showed in the community servers list, so to say.
they don't have no more questions in the chat, we can see about bringing
You can also
someone up.
request to speak, and you can be brought forth to say your question out loud if you really want to.
Yeah.
Events regarding the fantasy server in the future? I think so. Specifically, I do not know, and I think it's more of a question directed towards Tinker. So we'll save it to when they are arriving later.
As far as events go, I do believe we talked about doing the events later down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in the far future, but once we get a good baseline going for the server and kind of work out some of the minor kinks, we can look into doing events and maybe bringing over and tweaking events from this that we did a lot on the semi-realism and what we did on the semi-realism and tweak it to fit the realism style. And so we can bring some of the fan favorites over from that. Um, what's a good one that I know a lot of people like? This ain't 100% on what specifically, but events similar like fight night, tournament, migration events, especially now with how the profiles are set up, we can do species migrations instead of just Herbie migrations, Carney migrations, Dewey migrations. We can do a very variety of migration events along with those other ones. I'm not saying those are 100%, but those are definitely ones we can, work into.
Mm-hmm. Just Imperial asks yet again, what happened to the semi-realism server? Specifically, I think it were a mix of a bunch of things, both on our end and everyone else's. But it's something where, and to tie in Gareth's question as well, it's something we're working on. At the moment, no. To put it plainly, we do not have a step-by-step plan in mind. But it's something we're trying to figure out and work out with both of y'all's feedback and criticism, working those in and seeing how it plays out.
As far as tournaments every month, I think we've discussed doing tournaments more frequently. Um, as far as every month, that would be something we would probably need to talk more about. I can definitely see it being like a bi-monthly thing. So, or maybe even doing if if it's something we can feasibly do, we can probably do it every month if possible. Just keep, the reigning champs in rotation and also give
Mhm.
you more chances to defend your title. Um, Don't Wake the Bear is also a good event that we can definitely have in the rotation here. Fight Night, and then like Mini Fight Night and Fight Night. They're all good ones, and I do agree they do tie in with the PvP server. And while we're on the subject of events, Paradox, as far as bounties go, most or the majority of the bounties that we hosted on the semi-realism server were either funded by players themselves or funded by staff members. Um, I haven't been there for a bounty that wasn't funded in one of those two ways, but it's something we can consider. We can look into it, but as far as them not being as often is, to my knowledge, we just haven't been reached out about doing bounties.
Hmm. Because, as you mentioned, they are player driven, but it most definitely can be something we can begin to drive ourselves as well. Moving on to what Miu said. Just reading it through. Um, Multiple things that are constantly being brought up is being discussed. It's an ongoing discussion between the leads as well as a majority of the top dogs. Um, for specifics, I'm unsure, but I at least do read through it daily and go through everything that's being said to my best ability, juggling both real life work and this at the same time. When it comes to what caused it, um, I wouldn't say there is an ability to pinpoint an exact reason as to why, because I think there's a mix of several reasons why it might have caused a recession, both on our end and I would say everyone else's as well. Um, but it's something we're trying to reverse and work, I would say, against. And so far, we have taken a lot of the criticism you all have offered, as well as looking over feedback you've been giving us, and we have worked it into a few things that we have implemented. Some are we're still looking to implement, as well as we're currently looking for continuous feedback.
Um, Matt, I see you're asking about the semi-realism. Um, we're not expecting players to necessarily jump shit from one server and go to the realism. As we've said, we would like to get the semi-realism back up to its former glory, so to speak, where it was indeed a very, very active server, max pop almost every day. Um, so we're not, we didn't want to say in a way is having both servers up isn't us trying to shift population from one server to the other. It's just giving another outlet for people because some people who play semi-realism every day, for some it gets kind of stale and they like to branch out to various things. So with us opening this realism for people, and it had a lot of it has some of the core rule sets from our semi-realism. You get some of our core values from our semi-realism mixed in with our realism driven. playstyle. So that opens up allowing people who like prefer that style to go there, and also if they wished to play on the semi-realism. By no means are we going to say, "Hey, you got to stop playing here to go play here." We don't want that. Um, we are going to do whatever we can to get the semi-realism back up and running. That ain't a question about it. Um, as far as you mentioned, you saw people mentioning a boycott. To my knowledge, no one's been saying they're boycotting. It's just people, from what I've been reading in the pot general, due to the pot being so low, people aren't having the drive to hop on the semi-realism server. As I believe Gareth mentioned in here earlier, our semi-realism server, while it has its semi-realism factors, it is heavily PvP based. There's a lot of people who go on there to fight, massive groups, hunt big dinos, do all this stuff in the name of just outright fighting. Um, but with the pop being so low, that people who normally like play on Rexes, for example, if there's only 6 people on, they hop on Rex and there's nobody around, it's going to get kind of stale for them. Unfortunately, that's how it is at the moment. We are want to get that back up to allow people to not just sit there on a Rex and starve, but that's one of the main things that people. I don't necessarily think they're saying they're going to boycott the server for it, but that is what, in a sense, they're saying is the pop isn't there for them to maintain their normal play style. If you would like to request to come up here and speak your opinions, you can go ahead and request. We can get you up here and hear you out on what you got to say if that makes it easier for you instead of typing anything out.
Uh, Sino brings forth a question. What are the team's long-term plans to rebuild trust in the community and raise the population? Why was the team so adamant on barreling ahead on the fantasy server without significant communication to the community, which was a deep-seated fear for players for the past 6 months? Regarding rebuilding trust, we're trying to include and be more transparent on certain choices, votes, and everything included, honestly. Um, but as you do mention, it's a long-term thing, so it does take time. Um, regarding the raising the population of the server, we're trying a few different new avenues of, I would say, advertisement for the semi-realism server. But it's also going to have to be, as it was to the beginning, a word of mouth thing. Friends bringing in friends and people joining in and finding the server. I guess that's how any server goes. Why the team was so adamant on barreling ahead on the fantasy server without significant communication to the community. The fantasy realism server is something that has been in the works far longer than most people, I think, would imagine. It's been in the works from the launch date, it had been in the works for at least 6 to 8 months. It's something that got discussed already back in October, November of last year. Launch date got set quite early as well, so we had a goal to work towards. And when we were standing there with everything ready to go and launched this new avenue of Life Finds a Way for the Path of Titans part of Life Finds a Way, we knew and were aware of the low and dwindling population of semi-realism server, but we also wanted the new realism server to be a part of the driving force to bring new people in, because perchance realism isn't everyone's avenue of the gameplay, but then they also find out we have a semi-realism server. So it has opened up a new avenue for players to find us, as well as offering a different type of playstyle for our community that we haven't been able to offer before. I hope that answered the questions. Answered the question. Interesting. Swamp Brother brings up another point. I personally feel like being able to community vote on certain rules and admin positions. Some admins reach such a point of power that there's no one left to challenge their decisions. So having them being able to be impeached or challenged their decisions through vote would draw back in a lot of players. It's not something I at least have noticed been an issue, but it's I guess, a valid point if you see an issue with it. I do see you requesting to speak. Swamp, do you want to be brought forward so you can voice your opinions that way? All right. Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I don't personally have a problem with pretty much any admins. I mean, I've been gone for a decent bit, but I've heard things from people, I've had my own experiences, and I've definitely noticed that I'm not going to name any names because like everyone's doing this volunteer, so it's nothing personal, but some admins reach such a point of senior admin or all the way up where they can make these unilateral decisions that might not align with the community or make decisions and not have to worry about them because they're already so high up. You'll see like trial admins and stuff like that that are just starting to do it have a lot more involvement, and they might not make it to admin, so there's a lot more pressure on them. And I think having every admin responsible to people like through impeachment or their decisions can be questioned with a community vote, like not like a 50-50 majority, but like if 90% of the player base is like, we don't like this decision or we don't like what this admin is doing, I feel like that would draw in a lot of groups and a lot of people who feel like they've been wronged or that there's no actual way for them to voice some of their dissension without having them get shut down.
Mm-hmm. To kind of put it plainly, the only admin power that has that type of, I would say, power is any of the top dogs or even the owner herself. Because even as a lead, I need to clear both any rapid decisions I make with any of the other ones to make sure we've looked at this at any possible angle, as well as making sure everyone's on board. So it most definitely doesn't just fall to a single admin.
No,
But
I
if you,
think 99% of the time you're absolutely right. It doesn't fall to a single admin. But I mean, even as you said, like your decision has to be cleared by others and talked through. I think that decision as a whole, having a choice within it, I think players would really appreciate it because I know there's multiple rules and stuff that I've significantly disagreed with and wish there was an avenue where we could. I mean, like you can talk about it, obviously, but like having a vote on it. If 90% of the player base is like, we do not want this rule, or we want this, or we feel these decisions have been biased, or whatever it is, having them being involved in that, I feel like would make people feel like there's a voice to it. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And to repeat an old, already overplayed tape, but it's kind of the exact avenue we've decided, and the suggestions are for. You have a problem with the rule, bring it up. Note how you would want it to change or entirely be removed, and the causation for. Tinker,
Just
who
valid.
recently joined the call, is a very, very active person in there, and as much as it may just be talking to I guess, a negative wall, because Tinker's trying to find the loopholes and points you haven't thought or considered. She doesn't mean anything bad by it, to my understanding at least, but
Correct. Now, I know I probably sound like a major jerk in suggestions 90% of the time, but it is purely because the questions that I'm asking in suggestions are the exact questions that if that change or that idea or that suggestion is brought in, those are the exact questions that we will be asked by players, that those are the exact issues that we either risk running into or we know we'll likely run into. That way we can ensure that we're implementing it in a way that the original person who suggested it intended.
I understand that. I think suggestions are great. I really think they're a great forum to open up discussion and create this back and forth between admin and players and have that. I'm more of talking about something that it's not just a talk depending on whatever it is, but if it's like, let's say I get like 100 people to sign this thing, it's like, we don't like this rule, we want it to change. There's some actual weight behind something. Like, I mean, Lifelines Away has a good amount of people on Discord. Let's say 400 signatures of like an electronic thing or like a polling thing being like it would nice to have some actual power behind it because the discussion is just a talk. A poll like that actually has some real gravity, some real weight to it.
The main concern with that is, I'm sorry, Ted, not to like just let me just scooch on in here. The main concern with that is there was some worries with polling and with votes a while back that was brought up of people voting that's either just straight up don't play Path of Titans, that are not super active on the server, people getting their buddies to vote for the one that they want just because it's the one that they want and their buddies don't actually, care about the decision. And so if we started doing, the polls or the signatures, we would run into that problem again. Having that open discussion, it's not people can't just walk in, slap a check mark on it, and say and it just be done. It has to be, hey, Swamp thinks that X, Y, and Z should happen. And then people can come in and Blizzard can say, well, I think X should, but Y shouldn't. And I think, well, this should happen, but that shouldn't. The discussion, while yeah, it is a little more complicated, not quite as straightforward, it ensures that the decision that the community wants is actually the one happening and not just mass votes.
I mean, you make a valid point. It's definitely a valid criticism that people can bring their friends in and do that type of thing. But I'll counter it with this. That's just politics. I mean, don't make it like 50 or 100 signatures or something like that to get an actual poll. Make it to a point where even if 20, 30, 40% of the people are just friends, newcomers, or whatever it is, you still have a significant majority of the server going for a vote because you're never going to get a bias-free thing.
No. Well, the discussion does help with that. I do apologize if you can hear my dog. I am on my phone because my PC died, so my audio is awful and he is moody. But the discussion helps get rid of, it won't get rid of all bias, of course, but it helps get rid of some of those bias, because the people that are just voting because that's what their buddy wants, or they're just voting to be trolls, or they just see a ping and they just come in and, react with the first couple of emotes that are on there, because, we know some people just do that. A discussion makes that less likely to happen, because we have to see some actual sustenance to what people are saying, because right now there are 23,000 people in this Discord, over 23,000 people in this Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And Path of Titans alone has over 9,000 of those members. And that's not even including the people that don't worry about roles because they don't care about pings, So
Yeah.
100, 200 signatures in comparison to how many people are actually here is not a lot, and would not be hard to get necessarily, when that is what the suggestion channel is intended for.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also just going to shoehorn myself back in and mention that when a suggestion gets enough traction, and I'd say like thumbs up as the usual emote is, it gets brought, I would say, back in behind the scenes, and we discuss it further among all management, and all leads are welcome to discuss on it as well. Usually we do convey this by saying that we're going to bring it forth to the team. Unsure if it's always. I think it is. It should be always, at least.
Generally, yeah. It depends. Obviously, if there's something that, like, the profiles are a good example with the realism server. If there's, like, spelling errors, because we've all gotten a front row seat to what my spelling and grammar is like in the last week. Appreciate everybody helping fix those. Not my strong suit. Or like little minor changes. We're not going to go discuss it with the entire management team every time we're like, hey, this rule is kind of confusing. Can we reword that? Yeah, cool. Okay, done. But normally, just to give you kind of a behind the scenes on how suggestions work, when a player makes a suggestion, normally me, I will come in, hello at Swamp Brother, that same customer service response that I'm sure y'all are probably tired of seeing. Thank you for suggesting this, and then I'll go through and ask whatever questions or concerns that we may have regarding the suggestion. And then I'll take it back to the other leads, the other folks that help with the suggestion, and I'll throw it in there and I'll say, hey guys, this is it. TLDR of the 400 message discussion that happened in there. This is what we're working with. This is the reasons why they want this changed. This is the possible cons that could come from this. Go. What do we think? What's happening? And then we'll essentially have a similar discussion that happens, and then I'll be kind of the relay point between the people looking at the suggestion within the admin team versus the players, just so we don't have, 4 or 5 admins talking in the same conversation, just to kind of keep a one point of contact to make it simpler. And then from there, once a decision is made on it, yes or no, then we'll come back in and say, oh, Swamp Brother, we're going to go ahead and bring this in, or we're going to do this, but we're going to tweak this just a smidgen, or whatever it may be. So there's never just one person that comes in and goes, yes, this is happening because I said so.
Yeah, I definitely think you make some very valid points there, and I completely understand that. There is definitely a lot of inactive people, or people who just vote for no reason. And again, yeah, I think suggestions are great. I mean, I have no issues with them, and I think they absolutely are a great addition to Life Finds a Way, and have optimized many, many things. My moral point is exactly what you're saying, is you're bringing stuff back to the team, and it's a discussion between you all. That leaves, I would say, all the decision making up to the admin team on certain rules, which the vast majority of the player base may disagree with. And for me, I mean, as a player, that's what's important to me,
Right.
the entire player base enjoying it. And it's not like there's been unilaterally one rule where everyone's just like, this is the worst thing in the world, I hate it. But I've definitely known, like,
Right.
the majority of active players who are on every day, a couple rules which have been like, wow, I really do not like this. This is ruining my experience. But the admin team feels completely different on it, and then there's no recourse. I would like it to be where
Right.
there's an actual Like if we can, like not like a polling thing, as you said, people can just vote or do that. But if we can get,
Yeah.
let's say, 100 people voicing their concerns in one thread where it's actual people making informed discussions, I'd like to have some. I mean, it would have to be thought out and added more onto, but have some more player decision making within rules if there's a
Right.
majority vote on things with actual input from active players.
Well, that is exactly what happens with the suggestions. When I say the staff is discussing it as well, I say those two conversations, the conversation in staff and then the conversation that's usually myself with the players, that's happening simultaneously. The only reason that I'm the only staff member, again, just a single point of contact, so there's not 7 conversations happening in one thread at one time because that gets super confusing. The conversation with the players is still happening. I am just taking all the input from the players and going, hey, this is, and half the time I'm even linking messages. Oh, Swamp said this, Gareth said that, Ken said that, just so we know where things are coming from in case we have additional questions and need some clarification on it, whatever it may be. So the players are still in that discussion. It is just so we can look at it from the admin perspective of it, because the admin side of it, and then you guys still get that version too, because I'm coming in with this is the concern we have right now. Do we have an idea on how we can handle this? So players are still in that discussion. It's not just an admin's deciding things just because.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we're still in it, and I mean, a great example of that was the healer thing where we had Metries and Utis, and it was just this mega unkillable pack, and it was a lot of people proving how awful this was by just killing everyone, and the whole player base dropped. And there were suggestions for it, and it worked very, very well. And I think that was a great response to it, and something I'd like to praise from the admin team. I'm more of talking about, though, it all came down to what the admin team wanted. The players can put input and they can suggest things and all of that, but there's no real weight behind it other than what the admin team decides at the end of the day. And you guys do a great job listening overall. I definitely think you do. I'm not trying to hate on you for anything like that. I think it's a pretty great experience, or at least was, when we had a lot of booming players and I was on every day. People were on every day. I loved it. And I don't think this is the main reason why Life Finds a Way started to die down. It's just something for me personally that I know I've heard a lot of people through the years voice. There's no real weight to what you say or to what the players say or what they want, because it all comes down to what the admin decides the experience is going to be at the end. And obviously, you definitely need some of that. You can't just have a new player coming in like, I feel like T-Rex should just kill everything and be like that. But I'm saying if you have the majority of the active players making a informed decision, I think there should be some weight behind that other than, well, this is what we're going to talk about. Like some form of polling where we would both be happy with it, where if you reached this quota, this certain point, this amount of signatures with discussion and valid points in it, that it happens, whether it's a disagreement or not. It's an actual voting system.
I do have to disagree with you that the players don't have weight in it, because the healing actually is a great example. That decision was made because the players wanted that. Most decisions on Life Finds a Way, rules, even in the profiles like we're seeing on the realism, is determined because the majority of the players affected go, hey, we don't like this. This is not what we're enjoying. This needs to change.
And you're right. 90% of the time, I completely agree with you. I think you guys are great at responding to what players want, and I have no issue with that. I'm talking about at the end of the day, though, that 10% of the time where there's that disagreement between admin and player base, it all comes down to what the admin decides in the end. And that's my general thing. And I completely understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Can I ask what, like maybe for an example or something? Because I haven't seen any, at least not in recent years, where that was quite the case. Unless I'm overlooking.
Not.
I mean, there's one main one that comes. Sorry, you go on.
I was just gonna say that while I do understand where you're coming from, Swamp, I can see it from your perspective and see how it looks. But it's also something where, at least on the lead side, as well as the entire PoT staff team, working hard to essentially forcefully implement. And that's, to put it simply, we're here for the community and not for ourselves. And
Mhm.
I would say, to give ourselves a bit of credit, it's something we have been not the best at, but it's something we're most definitely working towards. And a more direct consequence of this that we have seen over like the past 2 weeks, as Tinker mentioned, is the feedback on the profiles. Am I happy with everything that's been changing on them? No. But that's not why they're here. They're not here for me. They're here for the ones that play it every single day, put in hours upon hours upon hours of it. So changing that whole mindset, and I guess essentially forcing everyone to change it as well, to understand that we're here for the players, not for ourselves, is something that we're, I guess, a big turning point, and something we're really forcing and trying to implement on every level at this point.
I completely agree with you, and I just want to start it off again with I thank you all for volunteering for this. This is not a paid gig. This is not something where you're going to have a ton of fulfillment through players being. I mean, you definitely do through players. Some players will be, but I know there's plenty of times where there's awful situations to deal with. There's admin hate. There's all these things. It's a stressful job to go through, completely unpaid, and I'm not coming in here to say that you guys aren't doing it for the players. I absolutely think you are. My only point is, which I mean, and we could talk around in this for circle, or we could talk.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, for sure.
This is a discussion in and of itself.
Yeah. My point is, it's just there's a couple situations, there's multiple groups I can think of. There's just stuff like that where it's I wish I would have had like some petition or some recourse where it could have been the mass of the player base wants this, and it would have kept a lot of people here if we actually had that. And I 90% of the time, I mean, the profiles, all the new stuff, that has been you guys responding amazingly to the players, and I thank you for it. It's been great. It really has. Life finds a way is on that upward curve again. But there's again a couple situations I can think of where major groups or big groups of people left the server who were on every day because they felt there was no recourse and they weren't heard because there's no. I mean, you do what the players want at the end of the day, but it is your decision at the end of the day. If you know what I mean.
Indirectly,
Is
yes and
there?
no. It's not really our decision. I get that this has happened in the past, and which we do apologize for. It hasn't been the intention to do so, but going forth, where it's something we're going to be changing.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will be optimistic and leave it on that then. If you guys say you're going to change, I am. Or if you guys are saying this is going to be a change and that's not something that's going to happen, I am completely willing to trust that and go forward expecting that. You know, like expect the good thing before seeing anything bad. So yeah, that sounds good
Right.
to me. Then.
It sounds like it's more of an older, like the way that things used to be. Because I will openly admit that there has been a few changes where the discussion is, oh well, with the old quote unquote the old life finds a way. We've seen that that term tossed around a few times within the last few weeks, where we didn't want certain changes to happen because that's just not what quote life finds a way was. And it's like, well, when the bulk of players want it, that is what life finds a way is now. Whether it was year, 2, 3, 4 years ago, that's what it is now, regardless.
Well, then I applaud you for that. Going for that change, even though it might not have been. I mean, the Life Finds a Way I started on is completely different than what it is right now. And that's okay. That's what it is. Servers evolve, people change, people leave. And if you're saying that going forward, you're going to be going off as things grow, then I'm completely okay with that. I feel like my question has been answered in full.
I would like to add, I didn't have much to say because I think Tinker and Tan kind of answered what I was going to say anyways. But one of the main driving points that kind of made me become staff was the community as a whole and how the community operated, and then how the community had a say in a lot of how the server grew and built and how it changed. That was one of the things that encouraged me to become staff, as well as seeing staff members who, you know, were keeping, the rules in check and just making the server great. It was a mixture of great staff, great community, great rules that drew me in. And I'm pretty sure that's what drew a lot of people in. And obviously, like Tinker mentioned, the old life finds a way style isn't like how it is now. But one of the things is like the adaptability of the community and how the community evolved over time. And just getting that under control and just evolving as we grow and get back into the swing of things is one of the key points I think we are trying to make and do.
Yeah, I would definitely voice as a player who's recently come back that I am seeing good changes, admins and player wise, rules wise. I think you're making a lot of really good steps forward into doing what the players want as a whole overall. And yeah, I mean, Lifelines Away was very different, and it's very different now. But adapting with that is what's bringing back the server. So yeah, it's good. All right, well, that's all I had to say. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being able to voice my concerns, and I like these Q&As. I feel like this is an excellent idea for players to really get that, not face to face, but voice calling and having everyone here being able to discuss it. Yeah, as close as you can. Yeah, open discussion like this keeps things healthy, and I think it definitely humanizes a lot of things because hearing an actual voice. I mean, people get mad and they say things, but anyone can say anything when you're just texting it. Actually talking to a person and hearing their voice, it humanizes things. It does. I think it disperses a lot of dissension.
All right. Well, not to rush, but thank you for the question. It was a very good one, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, you can mute me now. I'm happy to go back to listen.
Yes, I was gonna bring up pushing you out, but bringing you back to the audience.
Welcome to my TED Talk. Bye-bye.
We have a few chat questions as well that I marked while that discussion was going on.
There was one I saw that one I saw you didn't mark, which it was adding on to Swamp. It was from Zeno.
Yeah, I thought I got
Zeno was asking.
Yeah, no.
Zeno was asking about how they have personally seen a few posts on like the PoT Reddit about speaking on issues with moderation teams, and they were asking if we would like them to source them to us or not, or like send them to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you marked.
I'm also marked Earth Dragon's question, which I'm gonna read it out as well, but it's a bit of a long one. I feel like that most Path of Titan servers has been dying off for a long time. Swamp does have a point, but I do think another factor in it is a major disconnect between admin expectations and community expectations. For example, many of the rules have multiple takes on what the meaning of some of the rules are. I'm assuming you mean admins here, that many of the admins have multiple takes on what the meaning of some of the rules are. I don't have an issue with these, but there have been many a suggestion for clarification on what the admin's vision for how the server runs. I would love to see more discussion and clarification on these, and would definitely clear up for new and old players alike. Hell, perhaps even a LFAW beginner's guide could also welcome newcomers in, as I've seen other games and servers provide something like this to help newcomers and oldcomers alike to learn what the expectations are here. To put it simply, when it comes to, I feel like you're touching on the point of where every admin may not say the same thing, which I do agree with is an issue. It's something we're always working towards to fix, both on every level, honestly, from trial to top dog. But due to the size of the staff team, things may get mixed up. Someone remembers something wrong. They're not able to reach out to anyone regarding the specific question at hand in the timely manner. So they post and say what the last and most fresh thing they remember is. It may not always be correct. But if you have two admins saying the two wildly different things on one thing, bring it up forth through a ticket, through a report, maybe not a report, but a ticket, DM a senior admin, anyone, so they can look into the issue and properly flesh out what the actual thing to do here is. And a beginner's guide could potentially be something we could do. I wouldn't know how to structure it, how to word it, or what it would even be. Would it be a channel? Would it be, I guess, quote unquote, service, a role, anything? Don't know at this time.
Who was recommended the beginner's guide? Was that Earth Dragon?
Yes.
Well, Earth, if you want to shoot me a DM on, because I have seen a lot of servers do something like that, but they've all kind of, they all look a little different. If there is anything specific that you've got in mind for that, shoot me a DM on it. I'll start brainstorming that a little bit. See what we can think of for that.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that, or feel that kind of answered the question? Because when it comes to the major disconnect between admin expectation and community expectations, I think that's what you meant. Well, if it's not the answer to your question, you're more than welcome to just re-ask the question. No, you're typing.
The question from
Yeah,
Matt.
no, you're all good. Yes, Nexus, you had something to bring up.
Yeah, I think someone marked the question from Matt asking,
Yes.
would the team ever be open to a behind-the-scenes tour in video or stream format one day to show fans of the server what goes into management and creation of a branching community like Life Finds a Way? Kind of like how it's made or documentary to give perspective on how things look and feel behind the scenes.
What would you be looking for with that? Because I mean, obviously, we're not gonna bring out everybody's dirty laundry or nothing, but
With keeping what the specifics would be, I think it's something we could potentially do, but with a bit of workshopping around. I mean, we couldn't just say what we have planned and what we're potentially just talking about, but we could give the structure of how the backend is looking like.
kind of like the behind the scenes of the suggestions I gave a little bit ago, where if there's ever anything y'all are curious about, shoot, happy to answer questions best we can. Because to be honest, it's 90% of it is like administrative. It's like working in an office. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Best way to describe the behind the scenes is, like Tinker said, an office or the office. For those of you who watch that, there's a lot that goes into it, and without specifics on what to look into or what you're asking to see, kind of hard to narrow down.
Yeah, it's like, are you just asking how the Discord perms work, or are you asking like, hey, what does the report process look like on the back end, or what do you do when a ticket comes in? Like, what do the admins do? What happens when somebody goes, admin help rule break in global chat? Like, what does it look like on our end?
Mm-hmm.
Lost this question. I don't even see it now. Oh, there it is.
But yeah, no, as Tinker said, it's kind of like working in an office. The majority of everything, at least I do, and I know Nexus and Tinker do, and everyone here, honestly, is day-to-day administration work. Making sure stuff is running smoothly in the background, both internally and externally.
Workshopping. Matt responded up with workshopping around privacy for sure, but like a little bit of a visual aid and voiced over tour for timelines on how long things generally take for decision making, how things look on your end for rule breaks, and just the general development cycle of your office environment. Maybe as a
Look into the camera.
one or two. The many times we do that, I do it a lot.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Yeah.
I do that work actively.
When it comes to the timeline of decisions, it depends on the decision. If it's a big change, it takes longer to discuss and take and view every angle of it. If it's a very small change, when it comes to, say, I guess a rule change, then it's rather fast.
Yeah, something like a profile change, like Aloe's great example. The Aloe profile change that was done, where originally they had the male and female groups that only came together for nesting and then split back apart, but it was redone to allow to have an option for male and females to pack together, which I haven't actually posted yet because I need a name for it. And then PC died. Ideally, that would have only taken like a day, if that, and that's only because I had to work. Little decisions like that is a matter of like 2 or 3 hours tops, and that is purely because time zones exist. But larger issues that have the potential to, start a fire elsewhere, those take a little more times, where generally for bigger decisions, it'll be at minimum 24 hours because of time zones.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever seen a decision being discussed longer than, I would say, about the longest I've ever seen would be maybe about a week, but it was a very big decision.
Yeah, those are like big things.
So we don't sit on decisions for too long?
Or if it's a decision where the community is split. That those usually take the longest because we don't know which option to pick, because it's like, what group do we make mad? Because this group wants this group wants that, and they're split pretty well down the middle.
And choosing the one.
And that's what I'm in the suggestion going, poking everybody with a stick. Mr. Report's got to come to an end. No, I'm skipping things. What am I doing?
Yeah,
I have a few things marked from Xeno as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want... The next question is Xeno's, and it is realism related.
Since you're here, you can we can take them.
Yeah. Okay, I say if we want to put a pin in realism and do that after, I don't mind, or we can just work our way down the list.
No, we're just going to work the way down the list at this point, because the reason we held off on them because you weren't here. So,
and we do have one that was asked earlier that can be brought up with you as well.
Yeah, I noted that one down. So I'll take it after Xeno's. Xeno asks, what exactly is the criteria for profiling over in the other server? I don't believe it to be that realism adjacent. The profiles for creatures as a Utah particularly stand out to me as much more fantastical than realistic. Which is why I earnestly believe trying to sell the server as a realism setting to not be working out, and it might work better with either a refocus or a rebranding.
No, you're not wrong. It is a fantasy realism server, which is the name of the server is Life Finds a Way Fantasy Realism, and that's because in the bulk, the majority of the Path of Titans community, specifically the realism community, realism doesn't mean paleo accurate. This is how this dinosaur behaved, or this is how we believe this dinosaur behaved with current paleontology studies. It's essentially just a role play thing, is all it is. Some realism servers do lean a little more towards paleo accuracy. Others, take their own little spins on it, which is kind of what we did and why we decided to go the fantasy realism route. It is essentially fantasy role play. Realism means that there are profiles, which I am going to add. Excuse me. I am going to add that to the definitions. What is that one called? Definitions and terms. Just to clarify that. So there's not as much confusion. But the criteria itself is generally we'll base most of them off of an animal that makes sense with the species itself. We look at, okay, what can the creature even do? What abilities does it have? What emotes does it have? Does it have abilities that thrive in specific conditions with specific status effects? For example, one of the changes made recently with Latins are built to hunt at night. They have a lot of like nocturnal, nighttime based abilities, so they're nocturnal hunters. We look at things like that and go, okay, is there any animals that kind of vaguely adjacent to that style? And then from there, look at the behavior of that animal, and then it comes to translating it into terms that the game that it makes sense, that it is possible, because obviously we can't possibly take the full behavior of an animal in real life and apply it to a dinosaur in game, just because there's not enough emotes in the world to be able to portray all behaviors. So we kind of have a simplified version of it. And then there are a few that are not based off of animals that we were like, hey, this is a niche that we don't have filled yet. This is a cool idea. Let's see what happens here. Let's try this.
Tinker, do you mind if I interject something really quick?
Sure.
I had meant to try to say this before, and I forget where it is in this wall of text now. But somebody had mentioned something about a sneak peek into staff and what it looks like. Just to let that person and anybody else that's interested know, I and Larv, another TD, have been talking about formulating a newsletter, so to speak, for each game that will go out to the public en masse with some bullet points and kind of an overall what we're doing. For that person that was interested in that.
Yeah. I was going to say, this is news to us as well, so I like the idea.
It was literally something that was talked about between Larv and I today in the aspect of people wanting to know more and a way to format that where it's more succinct than us trying to disseminate information through the staff team and then have that sometimes unreliably go to the public.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Anyway, that's all I had to say. I have nothing really else to add.
Thank you for coming to watch this TED Talk.
Yep.
But yeah, that is how the profiles work from kind of start to finish. And then once it goes up, those profile feedback channels, every creature will get one. Those are not going to close. Those are going to stay there. That way there's always a place for people to go, hey, I kind of like this. Hey, I kind of don't. And when it comes to changing those profiles, when somebody makes a suggestion or an idea on the profiles or requests a change on them, that kind of to walk you through the process of that is, first I look at, is this possible? Is this something that is possible within the abilities of the game? And if it's not, just kind of say, I'm sorry. How would we do this? Do you have an idea of how we could do this? And if the answer is no, I just say, I'm sorry, but that's not physically a thing that can happen in game. But if it ever comes up, noted, and then if it is something that is actually possible in the game, kind of look at it, read through everybody's thoughts on it. Is this something that the people who are actually going to play this dino want to see? Again, Aloes as an example. They had a very unique grouping structure that there's only a few species that don't have a mixed gendered group option, and Aloe was one of them. But the Aloe mains of LFAW said, hey, yeah, we don't like that. That's not fun. So we revisited it. We did keep them as an option for those who did enjoy it, but then also we're adding in that third option for those who do want to be able to mix gender groups. Just to give you an idea of how the changing of profiles work and how we make the decisions of what stays and what doesn't.
Yep. Sorry, I'm just going through it to point out things I want to mention and touch on.
Since Tinker had just brought this up, Tan, also a conversation that I had with Tinker last night too, is both of us are aware of when things get brought up, there are times where it feels like it takes significantly longer than others. And I'm sure you've heard the same old rhetoric before, but a lot of times a bunch of staff are off duty, which may have already been said. I'm sorry I'm late.
No, but
You're
just
good.
that particular thing wasn't said. But that's also some a reason why decisions may take longer. A lot of the staff just may be off duty
Especially with holidays.
or during the holidays, personal reasons, and just honestly feeling burnt out and wanting time off. It's something we I can't find the right word, but it's something we're want to offer our
We
staff
do our
to
best to avoid it, but
to burn out our staff, absolutely. But
sometimes
we push for them taking their own time off to not recoup, but I'm not finding the right word here, but find their footing again, find the energy, find the motivation again, and
The
come
drive.
back. Yeah, the drive, and come back full force and being able to help into 100%. Next thing Sino also brought up is the issue several of us have is that we do want change in the main server. We want less marks, we want no waystones, and we managed to get the removal of food and water refills, which is good. But Life Finds a Way Semi is way too forgiving / easy, which leads to its loop of go to hotspot, die, buy a grow and TP back, and there's no actual gameplay loop or consequences in semi-realism, which lead to it becoming a slowly dying chat room. But several of these changes were pushed for in semi, got put into fantasy without any heads up, and this is a big contributing factor to some of us old heads being a bit ticked off.
I actually do have an answer for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
As for the reason it was put into the fantasy realism and not the semi-realism, first, a lot of those suggestions were a really good example of things that the community was pretty split on. I do remember seeing suggestions for a couple of those things, but it was always, half the folks in the suggestion were like, yeah, forget waystones, get rid of waystones, they're awful. And then the other half was like, no, what? We like waystones. We like being able to go back and be with our friends. Don't do that. But the reason that those changes were put into the semi-realism server is because that's just kind of the expectation. That's the norm of semi-realism, is not having food and water refills, not having waystones.
You mean realism?
Not.
Yeah.
What is that? What I said?
You mean realism?
Did I say semi-realism?
Yes.
I do. I got off work. I'm sorry, but that is the norm of fantasy realism, with the exception of less marks, because marks are not that big of a deal in fantasy realism. That's why there's a marks command and such. But yeah, that's why those are in that server, because that is the expectation that the community that plays that kind of server has already. That is the norm.
And when it comes to bringing back the loop of gameplay to the semi-realism server, it's something we're working towards. We raised the mark prices, for example. We want yet again to try the no TP route, but it's something we're gonna have to bring forward and test, and after the server has gotten its population back. As y'all were very vocal and very correct about it just hurting the server more in this moment.
There's a good example there. There's already a disagreement in the chat currently on if marks should be easier or harder to come by.
Yep. And it's one of the many reasons we try to take our time when it comes to deciding such things. Next thing was the Reddit stuff, so I'm just gonna actually say that link. Next thing was Matt that brought up the workshopping around for privacy, but I was answered by what's with the newspaper thingy. So I hope that would bring a bit of it as well. But I think the idea of doing a bit of a quote unquote tour is something that could be workshopped in whole. Ken also then brings up a good point. Also, if I may say this, I feel like a huge chunk left due to admins being more concerned with playing than being in the sky when there was a good chunk of admins on. Given I completely understand we all deserve to play, I just feel like that was a huge factor in the server dying. And yeah, this is something we have both seen and identified and are currently and have been working against for quite some time. We within the staff team usually say that we're admins first, players second. This includes when it comes to helping players or anything of the sort. So if this is something that the player base is still noticing, you're more than welcome to voice your concerns regarding it. When it comes to the realism server, this is going to happen, I would say less, being in the sky due to how complicated both profiles are, how in depth they are, and how rules are. So admins are less able to make a decision on the fly rather than having to sit down, look through a replay file, and lost my train of thought. But yeah, it's going to be more reporting and report heavy on the realism side. I do encourage you all to make a report when rule breaks happen there at every kind of point due to how complicated they can be. But this is something we're working on.
I'm also going through. Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. But I was just going to say it's something we're working on all fronts.
I got that mobile audio delay. I'm sorry.
It's fine. You can say what you wanted to say.
I'm going through the Reddit post that was linked, and there is a few comments on it. That's about the IO server. This is the Path of Titans Reddit, friend. Wrong Reddit. A lot of the criticisms I'm seeing on it are generally the server bad, and then other people saying, "Oh, how come? What issue did you have of it?" And there are a few things that I'm just going to say that's just an outright lie. Apparently, somebody got banned because he called an admin "wee man." No, unless there was a little more to it, but you're not going to get banned for just calling somebody "wee man." Oh, these are like a year ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that
while
was
you
more
read
recent.
through that, I'm going to touch on the next thing Gareth brought up.
Mhm.
He says that I feel like anonymous reports should only be for targeting. I've seen a lot of reports where people don't even put the person in who's getting reported. A report who has a offender in mind, but doesn't list out the offender in the report itself, isn't a valid report.
No.
So they will be needing to remake that. The only anonymous part we have of reports is the one who is making the report. This is the decision they can make, whether they fill out their AID or in-game name or not. It's not anonymous on who they are reporting. That is still public information. But if you've seen anyone or a report such as go through, you're more than welcome to reach out to a lead or a TD and we'll get it sorted on our end.
Yeah, because those shouldn't be going through at all. Those reports that are not fully filled out, ideally, they are taken. Admin goes, "Hello, at so-and-so. You seem to be missing some individuals, so I'm going to close this report right now. If you would like to put it back in and fill in the missing information, that would be fantastic. Do you have any questions? Okay, have a good day."
That's quite cut, simple and dry. Jules just says maybe take a real decision and work through it real time while taking us along for the ride. I think this connects back to how we take time and such for decision making. We already take too long on some decisions due to the time zones the different both leads are and staff team as a whole are in. So waiting as well on more feedback from even more people would make them take even longer.
When the suggestions channel is precisely what that feedback is for.
Yes, that too.
And usually there are, players taken along for the ride. Unless you're meaning something else by it. When there's a suggestion made that whatever the decision is, if there's a suggestion, I'm usually myself is in the comments of that suggestion, actively discussing it with the players. So the players are along for the ride. They're just not, I'm just not literally streaming my screen to them as the discussion is actively happening because the information is getting relayed back and forth as it is.
I also feel like it bears bringing up, and I'm sure this is going to sound crazy, but not everything you read on Reddit is true.
Wee man.
There's also, I think Tinker mentioned, if that was something, which I don't believe they would have got banned for just saying that, there'd have to have been more context behind that, as in they were continuously doing stuff, and that was the last thing they did, and we're like, okay.
Yeah, you don't get an escalated ban for calling somebody wee man. Now, if you sped run a ban and got a verbal first, second, and third in the span of 3 days, sorry.
Oh, one, that's not what I was pointing out by that. I also wasn't even pointing out the wee man thing. I was specifically referencing a time during the Isle Legacy where there were some players that had decided that they just didn't like Life Finds a Way anymore. So they got an admin into a call, recorded them, chopped up what they had to say, and put out an edited video. And that caused a lot of distress for that member of staff because hundreds of people then started DMing them horrible things. So it's sometimes we see things on the internet and off of rip, we don't even see exactly what it is. We can see something and that can correlate to an experience that we've had and we immediately get frustrated by it because it resonates. So I just think that in some cases, make sure we take the time to look into some things. And that's on staff too. Staff need to be a little more patient on things as well. That's by no means just a community problem.
Yep. Before we get to the next big one that I see someone else has marked, Nexus has. Matt, yet again, I would say we're open to it, to make a little bit of a video tour. We would just need to figure out how.
And what exactly you're wanting to see. Because there's a Discord of 23,000 some odd people. There's a lot. A lot. So just to have an idea of what you're looking for, so we know. So you don't got to hear us rambling on about the PoT bot or something.
Yeah. But this would be perfect for something to put into a suggestions where it's more concise and we can more easily read it over than scrolling back through this chat and trying to pick out where you mentioned this. Then moving forward, I think Nexus, you can bring this next one up since you've marked it.
Paradox asks, are there plans to add any custom plants, water sources that some mods have in the that some mods have into the two servers. I believe I think what was it? PT has a was it PT that had a mod that does that?
Yeah, it's the
That they
Arizona
developed?
Creator mod.
Arizona Creator. Yeah.
We can
It's
test it. You know,
yeah,
to the
we can
mod testing
test.
list. Take a look at that.
We can definitely look into it because with those because they affect the map. We would have to look into how they affect not only the map itself but also as well as how it would affect I guess you could say the dinos that would be interacting with them. Because if it's the one I'm
Yeah.
thinking of, it that also has like lava pools and stuff like that. And I don't know exactly how those work. It also has a couple other specific things that can be kind of buggy if it's the one I'm thinking of. But if it's something that is wanted, we can definitely look into it.
Yeah.
And if it's something we can, we feel is not that big of an issue and that it won't cause much issues in itself, we can go from there. But again, that will definitely have to be tested and just to see like what all it offers in that sense because I'm unsure on Tan may know more than I would on that as far as like saving stuff we add in.
It's doable. I think the current issue we're running into is loading them back in because the server doesn't automatically load them back in. I think there is a backwards way to do it.
There's a test. Let me add this to my notes here, and I'll test that.
But I know it is doable to save the creator mode's items that can be placed down.
I think we've tested the saving of the creator mode stuff before. So I mean,
Yes, we have
it's
tested
definitely
that
something we can look into.
100% testing and reloading it works. It's a matter of being able to, if we can find a way to get the bot to reload them after each restart, because otherwise an admin has to get on it each restart. And with like the 3 p.m. Eastern restarts, that's not a big deal. 9 p.m. Eastern restarts, normally not a big deal. It's the crack on restarts that there might not be somebody there, and we would really hate for somebody to lose a dino, especially on the fantasy realism server, because it is a little more unforgiving. Because hey, there's usually water here. Where'd it go?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 3:30 in the morning and everybody's asleep.
The next one I had marked up was from Hooli.
Yep.
They were asking about like what our plans going forward for increasing population or concerning the population for the Life Finds a Way, semi-realism and realism. They're also speaking on the influx of new players are great for them, the sake of change and development in the short term. How is the plan to keep old players from leaving the server? And one of the main points they have in here is granted how the new players are still learning the rules, but old players in general feel like they get less slack for rule breaking by mistake and get punished for it compared to new players doing multiple rule breaks with or without knowledge doing so and get away with a slap on the wrist and a finger going, no, bad dino.
It's a really funny way to put that.
As far as the population, as far as the concern of the population, I think we've addressed some of that beforehand on how like we're planning on increasing pop, which I think we discussed doing more advertisements in that as well as trying to get do more event stuff as well as keeping events that are popular in the give an incentive to be on as well as working with the community to make changes to fit how our community feels. As far as how to keep old players from leaving, that's ties into that first little bit there. We can
This is
we
one of
can
the ways.
list. Yeah, I mean we can, and that I think gets covered under that umbrella in that sense. But for the last little bit, generally when we're doing handling like rule breaks and reports or in game, generally if it's an accident, like there's no without a shadow of a doubt, like it was an accident that it happened. I don't believe we generally will punish you for that.
Well, it depends on, because
Depending.
when we say an accidental rule break, there are two kinds of accidental rule breaks. There are the, oh, that body didn't render for me. I didn't know there was a body there. Like it's in a bush. All I see is a toe sticking out. Like by the time I got here and murdered you, it's too late. I'm sorry. Accidental rule break is genuinely being unaware that a rule break happened. Oops, I forgot that's a rule. That unfortunately that's not an accidental rule break. That is because that anybody can say that. And we have to be a little careful with being a little more forgiving for folks that generally know better, the people that have been here a while, the people that are, repeat offenders, people that have been striked for the same thing in the past, because we've also gotten criticism for being too forgiving. And then we've gotten criticism for not being forgiving enough, where it's like, well, older players should get the same slack that newer players get when, well, generally no, because they've been here long enough. New players are, they don't know, they're still getting their feet wet, they're still learning it. And an honest mistake, biting an extra time or two after a body goes down, all they generally need is a hey, don't do that. And all is well. Now, if we have somebody that is back-to-back rule breaking and all you see is them getting a hey, don't do that, that's one of those things. You get that clip of whatever admin is doing that, and you can just send that to myself
or me,
and or Watts. Watts can be a little scarier sometimes. I know I'm intimidating, Hardy Heart, but and that will be taken care of swiftly, because that shouldn't be happening either.
I'm hoping that kind of answered your question there, Uli.
I hope so too.
If not, do let us know.
Yeah, retype the question and focus on the points you want us to touch on again.
I think next was you, Tan.
Yes, it's from Earth Dragon. If they had to list out the main qualms I've heard from leaving players, it would have to be these 4 following points. It would be the lack of communication between staff and the community. The community does not feel like they're being heard, be it through suggestions being disregarded with evidence or just votes not going the way people wanted it to. It was causing a lot of frustration and pent-up disdain for these problems. Lack of expectations set forth from staff as what they're willing to change and what cannot. A lot of these suggestions I've seen, be it for rule or for mod suggestions, there have been times where it was hard stop for people's voices on a matter before they were even heard, i.e. someone suggesting that healers being limited. Lack of control over intense toxicity that goes on in chat between players, and a lack of consequences regarding people who ignore admins in game. There have been many a time where people would full on argue for hours and no reports or admins went through to end it. They were told to stop but continued with no consequences, especially being dogged on for slight infractions. Hammer down minimods not politely answering questions, but snide remarks and comments. And most importantly, at least for me, life got boring. Yes, there are new mods and slight rule changes, but the realism server was the only pop of excitement that I've had in a while. Seeing mods that I've wished for life for a long while for the server, but that were constantly shot down. which led to the same monotony you deal with every time you play. And they also add on towards the end, I don't think life is dying by these points alone, but they do play a major part in them. I just unfortunately don't know how to best tackle this myself, but hoping others would have a better idea than I. Yeah, it's a lot of things, and it's several of them we are working on. The lack of communication between staff and the community we're working on. We're trying to be more transparent where we can, be it through suggestions or anything. And as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to change the way we've been operating, I guess, fundamentally on where we're trying to more go through with what the community wants rather than what has been done before. When it comes to what can't be changed or not, I mean, I guess everything could be changed, but that would also fundamentally mean that you would change the identity of who Life Finds a Way is as a server and community. So that's something we're always aware of and keeping on the lookout for. Mix packing is a big deal. It's something we're rather known for, and not something we at least are looking to change anytime soon, at least, because it's something that we would like to keep ourselves known for as well.
My big thing with that is, do we risk losing more people by making the change because we're changing a core aspect of something that we're known for, such as mix packing? Granted, there's not anything I can think of off the top of my head that is just a hard stop, no, not up for discussion, never, ever, ever going to happen. Where if every player on Life Finds a Way said, hey, we hate mix packing with every fiber of our being, then it's like, well, it was fun while it lasted, I guess, but I reckon it's time to not do that anymore. But for something like mix packing, because that's a good example, because that's one that gets brought up at least once a week by some poor random new little soul that has never been in here and then gets jumped by a Rex, 2 Metries, and an Aloe. And we know at this moment, in the way Life Finds a Way currently stands, if we booted mix packing, that would probably be just about it for Life Finds a Way.
Most likely.
Correct.
Moving on to the next one. A lack of control over the intense toxicity that goes on in chat between players. This is also something we're trying to hammer down and work towards. To be better at it, essentially. The lack of consequences regarding people who ignore admins in game. This is also something that admins themselves had to kind of take charge of. Because as leads, we're unable to overwatch every single situation they do. We do trust them to handle themselves appropriately and properly when it comes to both punishments and how they speak and talk. So if someone
something too, Tan, that I'd like to point out just on that front, with staff sometimes taking it on the chin longer than they should, it is also a thing that we are working on with the training that we do for staff, making sure that they're a little more aware of their ability to make autonomous decisions. Along the line, there's gotten to be a tick, I would say, where some of staff don't feel like they can make that call without fear of repercussions. And that's never been intended. It's just an oversight on our part that is in the process of being rectified with our new systems coming out, I guess would be the best way to put that. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. And as Watch mentioned, it's not something we have intended for them to be hesitant to. But it's something we have entrusted admins to be able to do themselves. But it's something that we're also working on in the back end that we have been made aware of. And the last point, life got boring. Yeah, this is something we realized with the rather no gameplay loop, as it can be rather stale, It's only the one type of gameplay that we do then offer with this, which is something we're trying to change. Looking towards what can increase the gameplay loop on all fronts to not just make it go to hotspot, die, buy a grow and TP, and then go back. But as well as we're more on the lookout for what the community wants, to also not just shoot down every mod suggestion we see. But I think that answered them all. Does anyone else have anything to add to those?
Tinker and I have also talked, not at length, but briefly, even last night, a little bit about trying to keep a bit more of an open mind on mods and trying to facilitate the mod team to have more people, so things that need to be looked at can be looked at. Because I do think some of what happens, to reference what somebody said up in the chat a little bit, their friends will ask, or a friend of theirs had asked about a certain creature, and they get told it's on the list. And then the nature of the beast with the small group that looks over mods, it takes so long that they don't get an answer within like a realistic time frame. And then they feel like their idea has not been looked at, even though it is. It's just taking a long time, which is another point that Tinker and I have talked about, trying to facilitate quicker turnaround on those things.
All right. Moving on to what Miu said. They mentioned at the top, what is the progress on tracking down on server toxicity, both in-game and on here? From the start, I think it's gone quite a bit away. We still have a way to go, yet again, but we are trying our best to catch every infraction of it when it occurs. But we're not able to see everything. We can't monitor every chat 24/7, be that on the Discord or in-game. While we do have logs, we get several thousand logs each and every single day. So something we do also ask is for the community to report toxicity infractions when they do happen. So we are able to be made aware of all of this. And then they also mentioned a rather long text. The community overall, I think, is what makes Life Finds a Way what it is. When you're first joining the server, it's the first thing you see aside from the dinosaurs. Player/player interactions, and especially admin and player interactions. As a lot of people have stated, and I think will always state, one of the largest issues is with the current rift that has been developing both. It's every day that you see disagreements, yes, they're normal and to be expected, but in-game and on the server it's becoming more and more heated up. Hostility in Avidium caused by admins is more common. Mini-modding and players going at each other's throat over mistakes made in game. It pushes away anyone playing, especially anyone new looking for a server they like. I've only been in Life Finds Away for a few months. I know I started in PoT General in February. I haven't played any other server more than Life Finds Away, and there's so many reasons as to why. I joined during peak times and it was slowly starting to die off. The community was welcoming. The people you met here were helpful, and I met some very good long-time friends on here. Admins were on consistently, the rules were easy to understand, the reports were handled quickly, and for some odd reason it just deteriorated. The community is why I stayed, yet I feel the same community is the reason why many people are leaving. My Turkey being recognized consistently was a large point of why I wanted to stay. I don't want the community to be cultivated into a shell of what it was by both players and admins' responses to it. We desperately need to patch it up and rebuild all the trust and such we have lost. I cannot speak on everyone's behalf, and maybe to some people the community is doing just fine, but what from I've read and what I've heard from people who have been here for years, it's a glaring issue. I don't wish to be a broken record or recycle the same points people bring it, yet has to be hammered. It's a lot to take in, but yeah, I do agree. Arguing in global in-game is not something we're looking to have. Snide remarks by Minimaris is also not something we're looking to have. You're more than welcome to report both instances when they occur.
That is something that that is another really good example of the community being very split on, is because a big thing to remember is you can't read tone in messages like the ones in Discord or the ones in global chat or group chat or local. It is normally pretty difficult to tell if that person is saying, "Hey, Aloe, you can't do that," or saying, "Hey, Aloe, you can't do that." You know, and those two, despite being the exact same words, those two have very different connotations to it, you know? And the problem is not having that line of what is quote unquote mini modding and what's not, because people are generally just saying, "Oh, hey, you're not allowed to do that. You should check out the Discord. Here's that link." To some people, that's mini modding and that's awful, and that should be left up to admins and only admins. And admins, non-admins should never be answering questions, because what if they get it wrong? When that welcoming environment, like you said, the people helping each other, is what kind of draws people into a community server. That community. So I know reporting every disagreement in global feels a little silly, and no, every disagreement in global is not going to end up with players striked and banned or whatever, but it is difficult, like Tan said, to know where the issues is when we're just not there to see it, or when, even if we're in game, just because an admin is in game doesn't mean they are looking at global in that moment. They might be working on a report in logs, tabbed into Discord for 30 seconds, looking down and texting their mom, whatever it may be. But those situations should be reported, but also, like I saw Watts say it up there a little bit ago, where it was the toxicity needs to be reported with the understanding that every situation is different, and the rules are going to be applied with the intentions of what they actually mean, but with the understanding that every situation is different, I believe is how he said that. So with toxicity especially,
rules should be applied uniformly with the understanding that each situation has its own context.
And toxicity is a really good example of that, because if I had a nickel for every time I got called stinky in global, like I'd have a new car, my house would be paid off at this point, because the context of the way that's used is normally not. There's nothing harsh behind that. That is just people being silly. That is, if anything, a term of endearment at this point on Life Finds a Way. But even something as simple as people putting L in chat after winning a fight, it's like, good and well your intentions there. So those situations, regardless of how silly it feels reporting those helps us immensely when it's just a situation that we didn't get to see all of.
I think that kind of touched on the whole point there that you were trying to make.
After that one, I do see Gareth responding to Earth Dragon's bullet points there. The first point is a big one for me. It feels like most of the time suggestions just get disregarded, even with the overwhelming community input. Unless I'm, again, overlooking one, I can't think of any suggestions that had overwhelming community support that we just outright said no to. Generally, if we say no to a suggestion, it's not just no, that's not happening. left at that. It's, hey, that's not possible because of XYZ. Generally, we are really desperately trying hard to avoid the outright shutting ideas down. We at least want there to be a conversation to see if there's a middle ground, see if it's something that can be used. Again, regardless of our personal feelings on what that change may be. But normally we're not just outright shutting down suggestions. Again, unless that's the point that Swamp made earlier, we're kind of the quote old way of the way that things worked. Unless that's what Gareth was referring to, and that has since improved, but I think I skipped one. I just noticed I think I skipped one.
There's quite a few. And I have another one from Earth Dragon while you're looking for the one. As I do like the realism server is passworded and semi is not, but people interested in the fantasy one cannot join without the Discord. How can they get access to the Discord if they cannot join the server? The main,
if you have an answer for that one, we're all ears.
Yeah, because we have password protected the realism one to ensure people are really reading the rules and making sure they follow the profiles. But we're also hoping that whenever they're looking for Life Finds a Way, they may also find the semi-realism one, which is open, which has a direct link to the Discord. That's what it's called. But we have no direct way to solve it.
Yeah, I think
that was Halsey, not Gareth. I just realized I got those two mixed up. I'm sorry. There's a lot of names.
Yep.
I think that was more so if the person doesn't have Discord.
Yeah, then it's sadly not anything we're able to offer due to how extensive the rules are and the profiles are.
There's just no way to ensure that they're actually reading them.
Mm-hmm.
If there's ideas, we're open to ideas. But and I know there's going to be a suggestion of like the tiny URL thing, like we have for the main server's rules. That is a lot of information to throw in a Google Doc. And keeping those two even would be very difficult to navigate. First and foremost, which would be my main concern, is that it would just cause more confusion than anything. And that's also kind of that's just how realism and fantasy realism servers work, is they have Discords. That's just how they are. And so far, there hasn't really been a solution found to let those who don't have or can't have Discord be able to join those.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one that I saw Ken asked. It's about admins. So an admin who is inactive for 3+ months should be removed unless they're having a baby. At that point, what is the point? And then they followed up with, can make room for new admin. To my knowledge, we don't have I don't think there's a cap for the amount of staff we have.
No, there's not. There's not a limit.
Yeah, so it's
realistic.
It's more so, do we feel at a time would this be a good opportunity to bring in more staff, or do we feel like having more help at this time is a good idea? And then as far as inactivity, like I think Tan mentioned earlier, you do have people who do get burnt out of, like, either they get burnt out of the game and want a little bit of break, or IRL is getting stressful at the moment, so they need to, step away for a little bit. You got a whole bunch of things that go into that factor. And especially when it comes to issues of people who are dealing with a lot of stuff mentally, them stepping away for a little bit by still being staff putting them on a timeline can cause more issues to me if they're dealing with some stuff like RL, like involving IRL issues that's affecting them mentally. Putting a cap on saying, "Hey, you have 3 months to come back," can add issues to that.
Risk them coming back before they're actually ready, you know.
Next thing that's being brought up by Gareth is that he feels that something that happened on Discord should not be punishable in game. Why was that changed?
I have a good answer for that one, because people were. I have strong feelings on this one, because to be honest, that one was my idea. Hey, my fault. That one, unless there is that is one of those things where I'm not saying that can't change, but we need some really, really good reasons as why that should change back to the way it was, because people were using Discord as a place to just kind of get free toxicity strikes, free argumentative strikes, because nothing came from those. You know, they fall off in the same amount of time that an in-game strike is. So in some situations, we'd have an argument happening in game. They'd get told, "Hey, knock it off." They just drag it into PoT general and continue. It would get a Discord strike instead, and nobody gets Discord strikes generally unless their account gets hacked. Or people were just using it to just bicker, game unrelated, just bicker and be rude and be hateful, which is, stirring something up in the community that we really don't want in the community. And then just getting that strike and, not being rude and hateful in Discord for a few weeks, and then rinse and repeat. If it has consequences in game, that is the consequences to those individuals' actions. My response to that is, if you don't want a strike that affects the games that you play, do not be toxic in that game's Discord. Or just don't be toxic in general. That is also just a really good solution. But if there's a reason that it shouldn't affect both, I'm all ears. Because it's the same individual, regardless. You're the person. Xeno in game here. Xeno, I'm sorry, you spoke most recently, so you're getting used. But you in game and you in Discord, that's the same person. Gareth in game, Gareth in Discord, that's the same person. Tinker in game, Tinker in Discord, that's the same person. There's no reason those punishments should be disconnected, because I know not to be toxic. I know not to be argumentative. If I make the conscious decision to do that, that is the consequences of my actions.
I think either Nixus or Tinker has marked the next few questions, so you're free to bring them up in order, I would say.
Roll back up.
I think Tinker's next.
Oh, hang on, I gotta find it. The Discord. I beg of you.
We're about midway up the scroll at the moment.
I was gonna say we're about an hour behind on the questions, about 40 minutes
an
hour.
So
what GIF are we at? What GIF? Where are we?
Okay. Think you want me to read the question you marked for you?
Please, because I'm on mobile and I'm fighting for my life.
So Earth Dragon asked about how you mentioned that it's generally just you answering the players in the suggestions, and how they feel like more people would prefer if more admins interacted within the suggestions themselves, as they say, as going through one person kind of feels like players are being placated like children while the adults admins talk.
I do see why it feels like that. To be honest, that is just a point of contact. That makes the discussion easier to work on from an administrative standpoint. And that also ensures that if there is one point of contact for suggestions, I know for a fact that I'm given the same information. There is no issues of, oh, Will Nexus said this, or Will Watts said that. And it's like, no, I was here. I said this. I know what I said, and I'm saying this again. It makes it run smoother, if that makes sense at all.
Sad Cloud asked about how generally they don't get many questions or much info on the dinos they've suggested. Meaning mainly being like how their friend suggested Smilo being added a month ago, and the only info they got so far it's on the list. That is
I'm sorry.
As we discussed earlier, is the mod testing team itself for a couple months now generally was a team of roughly 7 people generally, and getting mods tested. While you can do, we have our checklist we go down. Some of it can be handled by 1 or 2 people alone, but then we have other factors that we want to test in, like how do they fare again in group fights, how they fare against all these different tiers, how they group up with certain ones, various things that we need to look into for the mods. And getting all those people on at the same time can be difficult at times due to time zones, real life, various different things. However, we have, I think Watts mentioned how we're working on a workaround for that to get the mod testing more streamlined in a way. As far as mods go, generally I know I tend to keep a lot of the mod stuff as best I can up to date with my mind. I know, let's see, for the Smilo specifically, I believe we have finished testing on it. I think we just need to go review some stuff on it prior to putting anything up. And with all of our mods that we are going to introduce to semi-realism or put up for a vote on the semi-realism, if it passes, I think we're also going to include it on the realism as well. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, generally the votes are going to be for both, unless it's fantasy, and obviously fantasy is just going to be for the fantasy realism.
Yes. So, and without going too in depth, we do have a list of mods that have been tested. Like I said, the Smilo specifically, from what I can see, I believe its testing is done. I'm probably going to revisit just because I like being double sure on stuff. But going back on that, and then also I mentioned earlier, with the realism server being the way it is now, and how profiles can kind of balance some things out. To me, that if I'm not mistaken, Tinker, did we not discuss something with the Dino?
Yeah, there's some discussions with Dino Sukas, the big dragon, Dominus, I think is what it's called. Mods that are just a little broken that can be fixed with a profile, even if they're out of the question for semi-realism until changes are made to them. That doesn't mean they're out of the question for fantasy realism, because we do have the beauty that is profiles that we can say, hey, this is broken, so you can, they will work to conserve their energy, so they will only use X ability X amount of times per fighter. They will only do this if they're below this health, However, we may need to nerf whatever the issue may be to make it not awful to be against.
Tinker, may I say something?
Yes.
So I see Paradox mention something, and Halsey had mentioned something about the community helping with testing. both good ideas. And like I said, I'd like to talk to Tinker at a later time about that. But another thing that the community can absolutely help us with is all of the profiles and the rules for the fantasy realism at the moment are a work in progress. So the more viewers that are on that can stress test, and I'm not saying guys log on and play just because, but if you have free time, just to get on so we can get aggregated data of as many people as possible playing through the profiles as possible, that also help us, not just for the fantasy realism, but also for semi-realism and the way things work. It's just like if we had a new rule to semi-realism, if the server is full and there's a bunch of people interacting with that rule, we get to see more quickly if it's something that is functional or not, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Tinker, because I know you don't want to scroll. I think the next question was something you marked as well because you got pinged for it.
No, I'm gonna hop back up super quick, but I am gonna do that one too. With the whole Tinker being the only one in suggestions thing, there is a few people mentioning that they do want to argue with people other than me. Generally, it's not just me. I am simply the person relaying the message. I am just the person with the spoons at the time to be the, I don't know, the bridge, I guess is a word for it. It is rare it's just me. I'm just the one, like I said, typing the message. I'm just the name that pops up. But I am relaying the player's concerns to the people handling suggestions on the staff side, and then I'm relaying staff's concerns to the players with the suggestion on the player side. I know I am argumentative. That is the point. And I probably sound like the biggest jerk in suggestions half the time, and I'm sorry. I really hope I don't. I promise I'm nice most of the time. But the points that I'm making in suggestions, my personal feelings on a suggestion never gets put in suggestions, with very, very few exceptions. And if I do, I always say, hey, I usually don't give my 2 cents personally, but this is it. I am the voice and nothing more.
Something to also consider too is when you put in a suggestion and you and your friends talk about that, whether before it goes into the suggestion channel or after, it's something that you all feel passionately about. And there are going to be cases, definitely not all of them, but some of them where that is a fun for you at the cost of X. And sometimes the cost of X is something that we can't quantify. And that is hard to convey to people who feel strongly about something. It's like everybody that's ever had a baby feels that their baby is the cutest. Sometimes it's an ugly baby.
That's a good way to put it. And then the next one was, I scrolled past it. Mobile Discord. I swear. There it is. Perhaps the server. Okay, yeah, that one. I did somewhat respond to it. I didn't see an answer, but Earth Dragon had said perhaps an intro to the server. Place these fundamentals forward so they're not so jump scared and are aware of what this server is about. Could possibly help if we want to keep that entity and not leave a bad taste in their mouth. That is also referring to things like mix packing and rules events, all that jazz. And that is, we kind of have one. The message of the day when you log into the server says, welcome to Life Finds a Way. We are a mix packing server. We have rules that you can find here, such as body down, body tether, blah, 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 blah. They're there. Do people just click through them? A lot of them, yes. But if they're not going to read them in game when it's a forced pop up, they're not going to go to a special channel in Discord and read it either. So there's not a whole lot of point in pasting it in 2 places at once. But we do have that. And if there's anything, if you guys want to see the message of the day added or changed. That is another one of those things that's not set in stone. If there's things that y'all think should be added or not be on there, or whatever you may see fit, that can be a suggestion too.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got the question right after that from Hooli.
Mm-hmm.
Hooli was asking about or saying that they would like to see or maybe test something for like a week or so. Would be only allow mixed packing within like species groups, like hadros with hadros, tyrannosaurids with tyrannosaurids, etc., etc.
Did you have a response? Or because I do. If you don't, I don't want to jump in line.
I feel like you might have a better response or a more formal one. Mine was more so bringing it to light, I guess.
Okay.
Just bringing it up.
So again, that's one of those things that would need to be a suggestion so it can be discussed because, like I said earlier, I firmly believe that if we change the mixed packing aspect of LFAW, I think that could be the nail in the coffin because people like that. But with the hadros with hadros, tyrannosaurs with tyrannosaurids, that works great for tyrannosaurids, sauropods, and hadros. Unfortunately, there are a lot of species on LFAW in the game in general that they're the only member of that family. Tyrannosauridae, yeah, there's a lot of those. The Thals family is Thallus hadromidae. Guess what's in that family? The Thal. The like 3 subspecies of Thal that we know of. And so a lot of species just basically wouldn't be able to mix pack at that point. Herbivores and carnivores alike. And so it would be like essentially limiting mix packing, but only for some species, which I feel like might be worse overall than outright getting rid of mix packing altogether. Because then it's like, oh yeah, the Rex, who has no trouble holding their own, you can have Dasps and Alios and all that fun stuff in your group. Now the Kai, on the other hand, you're fine on your own. You'll figure it out.
Just to quickly address something that's really recent within the last few messages in chat. Are they not adding a crocodile that's bigger than the dino as to the base game?
I would have to look.
I believe I heard something about that just within the last 2 days.
They have a roadmap for the dinos they're making. I think there's 1 or 2 more dinos going to be released. Microraptor is one of them, and I think there may be an aquatic on that list as well. But I'm not.
I know there's
sure.
one full aquatic,
yeah.
but I don't know what it is, and I don't know 100% about semi-aquatics.
And also, just to reference your Dinosuchus, I do believe the weight was dropped on that, Halsey. I believe. I don't even think it's what it was before. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
I was going to say, moving on to next question, perhaps.
The next one's a really good point.
I don't know which the next one is.
That's Halsey, I feel like there are biases to determine what is or isn't toxic, and it creates an unfair environment. And that is precisely the concern and why reports are good, because in that moment, we tell staff, and any admin will relay this back because I probably sound like a damn parrot with this one. If there is the tiniest shadow of a doubt that there might not have been a rule break, or it might not be as toxic as they initially thought it was, if there is the sliver of a doubt that there's not a rule break there, then instead of the admin doing something right then and there in game, we tell them, hey, there needs to be a report for that. That way we can go over the recording and we can take a minute to go, okay, hang on. Let me think about this instead of making an on-the-spot decision. And that's when that discussion can happen where, I can say, oh, well, I know me and Tan have been good buddies for years. And that's not what that means. That's this group conversation that happened was totally unrelated. And, I'm talking about somebody with, the name of Stupid Head, because we used to, what was that old Isle Legacy guy's name? Dumbass, was it?
Yeah.
But the guy's name was Dumbass, and if I had a nickel for every time somebody got yelled at for calling somebody a dumbass when they were talking about the guy whose name was Dumbass, again, that's when that conversation needs to happen, because then we can be like, hey, here's context. I wasn't being toxic. This is what was happening. And we could go, oh, okay, cool. Just kidding, carry on. Or we can say, hey, you towing a line there. You need to not do that again. Or strike if needed, obviously.
But then it also needs to be reminded that not everyone knows your friends. So if they think it's acceptable to tell other people that, they will then begin to tell it to entirely random people. And it will then be viewed as acceptable behavior. So it's also something to keep in mind of new players coming into the server. But then I also have kind of the same topic from both Falls and Halsey. Falls brings up the question, what is the testing procedure unlike the checklist? And Halsey brings up the question, as part of the community that is usually heavily involved in the new mod suggestions, we wish we had more communication as to what is tested. I feel like a lot of the time we supply stats, videos, etc., and it doesn't matter as we don't even know the criteria to meet. We do have an internal checklist of each mod that they do fill out, and one of the big things is we check if the dino kind of fits within its range. Is it overpowered? Is it underpowered? Has it that one ability that makes it absolutely broken beyond a shadow of a doubt? Or
hang on, I'm grabbing the tag really quick.
Yeah, and
there it is.
The model of the dino working properly, the animation, the sounds, everything. Does it cause other dinos to absolutely just stop in place, like we had with a mod we tested some time back?
The one Pecky Rhino.
Yeah,
not the one we have, the other one.
Yeah, it just caused other dinos to freeze in place when it used one of their abilities, or I think
completely broke abilities. It broke. It made it unable to use an ability. It had a lunge charge that was meant to stun you for a moment. However, if you use that ability on somebody as they were charging an ability of their own, it would lock them in the animation. So if you did it on like a Rex charging its bite, it would lock them in that bite animation. So they just looked like they were standing there yelling, and they couldn't do anything. And that's like a great game-breaking bug right there. The mod checklist itself, I'm going to speed run it a little bit because Tan touched on a bulk of it. Quetz is being retested. Yeah, Quetz is being retested. It's on the list. I know you're probably tired of hearing that, but it's on the list. Things that we go over, and this is the actual modding checklist that I'm just going to read off really quick. Name of the mod developer, date of last update, is it updated frequently? When we look at that, we look at not only is it updated frequently, we do consider has it needed updates, or is it just being updated to the most recent patch and then left alone? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It doesn't, just because a mod's not, something brand new added every month to it, doesn't knock it out of the running. It's just, hey, is it being kept up to date? Is it good? Do the devs accept bug reports? Because a mod that we can't contact the devs on and say, hey, Pookie, this is a little broken, can kind of leave a bad taste in our mouth, because that opens up an avenue of problems. The mod's tier, the mod's diet, just so we know if it's going to fall in the carnivore, herbivore, or omnivore. Next is the combat weight, so that's an actual stat question. The health, another stat question. Does this character perform? How does this character perform of others against its tiers? That's when we'll just, go in, fight a bunch of whatever tier that it falls into, do a few above, do a few under, see how it holds its own. Does it get absolutely annihilated by its own tier? Is it nuke and Rexes? Does this character have any abilities that apply status effects such as bleed, venom, toxin, bone break buffs and or debuffs? Those we just generally make sure they're applying properly. If it says it does, takes 5% of health, that's not an actual stat. I just made that up. But if it says this ability takes 5% of health, we're going to go in and say, does it take 5%? Yes or no. That definitely just took like 40%. That's not good. Does this character's abilities function as expected? That's when we'll just generally run through the mod's abilities in and of itself and say, kind of similar to the last one, is okay, does it bite? Does the bite bite? Does the stomp stomp? Does the dive dive? To make sure that it does the thing that it's supposed to do. Do the status effects applied to this character function as expected? Again, the bleed, venom, so on, except applying to this species. Is it just randomly immune to bleed for some whatever reason? Does it have an ability that would require LFAW to make a special rule for it, such as the Dillo's Regurgitate? Do any of this character's abilities seem too overpowered or unbalanced? That is worded like a yes or no question. That is not treated like a yes or no question. It is not just a yes and we leave it at that. It is a yes and then a very detailed explanation of what, why, how it can be prevented, all that fun stuff. Does this character have any abilities that passively apply to others? Looking at you, Trope. Looking at you. And the Krylo. Do all animations play as expected? Do textures and skins play as expected? Do all vocal wheel options function as expected? Just making sure they don't have any busted emotes or anything. Does this character have a trophy and can it be returned to a home cave? Can this character interact with quest items, trophies, / chunks? Can it like pick up things and interact with the things that it needs to be picked up? And then just a general notes so we can throw in anything extra that we noticed as we're going into. But just to give you all an idea of what that mod testing checklist, that is literally word for word exactly what we look at. Sorry, that was super wordy. I know. I apologize there, but
Oh. Yeah.
what's next? I tabbed. Now I have to scroll all the way back up.
I did the same.
I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that.
See, I just put it in pop out. I ain't
Oh.
had to go with that.
I'm on mobile.
So you're just smarter.
Sure. Okay, there is one from Xeno that I think we might have skipped. What is the team's plan for worst case scenario? Hypothetically speaking, we don't reach quota and keep bleeding members across the next several months. That is a cross that bridge if we get to it. We have a few plans in place to ideally prevent that from happening. And that, advertising, having these QnAs, being active in suggestions, listening to players, having that communication.
Hold the majority
all
of
the
Garrett's
fun
Discord at gunpoint.
What?
Poor
Nothing.
Gareth. But yeah, no, there's the ideal. We won't have to worry about that. Show me somebody down, but have not seen it in the message. Perhaps when I draft up the beginner's guide, I'll track that in. Okay, that'll work, Earth Dragon.
I don't remember which
Suggestion about
one we
admin. Oh wait, I do see one that I forgot to put eyes on. Zeno said there's a suggestion about admin info that got shut down today despite having a significant number of upvotes.
Yeah.
Was it made today?
Yeah, it was made today, and Dog even commented on it. It's something we've had before. It lists out all the admins, their roles, and what game they belong to. Issue
yes.
with this, that is the primarily thing, is that this would fall, every update of this list would fall to one person. And most likely this would be one of the leads or a TD, even maybe... I have no clue who it will fall to individually. But the updates of this would include adding new members, adding... no, Dog responded to it as well, but not in the official one, but Gallo responded in the official one.
Upkeep aside from a it's not quite that simple.
Yeah, we also have something that also kind of already does this, and it's the roles we all admins have. That if you click on us and show roles, you see what game we belong to. What, for leads, it specifies what game we lead for. It specifies who has, for Bob specifically, revival approval as well. That was brought up. This also specifies who can handle a ban appeal. So the roles themselves in general already do this. And these are the kind of main points, and the upkeep of it, it got quickly outdated. It would need to be updated frequently when it will all fall to one singular person.
When it would just be kind of a little redundant and, like I said, not that simple, because there is a general outline of what each position is expected to do. It's not as simple as a bullet point list of, oh, you're going to do X, Y, and Z every day, because it's just every day is a little different. Context, my favorite word. I think the next one's fine. Maybe.
I'm responding to them in chat.
I feel like I saw something I was going to speak on, and then I've done forgot it.
The one after the one we just did. Oh my god, mobile Discord, I hate you so much.
Saw a quick question from Band. Is there any progress from Alderaan with the 200 player service? We are just as curious as you are. This is not something they update us on.
Not that we've heard of, at least.
No. I mean, we could ask, but they're most likely just going to say, hey, we can't share anything on this at this time.
We're going to get the same answer that y'all get.
Oh.
Cries.
Yeah, yep. it'll be a
best
pop-up.
Thing you all could do is make tickets in their Discord and ask them.
Yeah, go ask them.
It's similar to how TLCs work. We find out the same day y'all do.
Yep.
I think the next question was from Huli. I think.
Oh, yep.
I think you put out
quick question.
I just have something to say. Nexus, please sit closer to your mic.
Is this better for you, Watts? Is this better?
Thank you, Nexus. Next question is from Huli. And this is about the strikes in-game and Discord being correlated. How is it that Discord strikes are linked to in-game strikes, whereas in-game strikes are separated between the in-game servers? I've seen people get a third strike on LFAW semi-realism one day and being online in the realism the day after, getting a third strike on LFAW semi-realism again. And in my opinion, but should one get a third strike for misbehaving on one server, then it should be carried back to all other in-game servers. Otherwise, the player gets 6 strikes instead of 3. So with the PoT servers, I don't disagree with you in theory. However, there are... I'm not at my PC to be able to check this.
What
Somebody want to pull up the punishment doc super fast and tell me what line number we're on right now?
Oh, I think we're on like 12,000 or something.
For punishments?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Hold on.
For PoT.
For PoT, we're at 10,942 is the last one we filled.
We would have to scroll through 10,940 some odd punishments to go, okay, you're permed. You're permit. Okay, you're permit. You're permit, and you're permit. So that's just.
Or if it can be somewhat done
difficult.
easier by specifically searching for the term third strike : perma. And I'm doing a quick Control F search of the entire Google Doc of this, and it's still just searching.
Hello.
Yeah, we
Now,
have
why
a few
the reason
thousand
that they're
things
not
to go through.
Yeah, the reason that they're not connected across games, because this is a question I've got a few times. It is possible to get banned from LFAW community as a whole. That's generally you goofed real big. That's a no appeal. No appeals get yeeted from all games and yeeted from the Discord because they ain't coming back. And that is like normally that is like outright either things that were just straight up illegal, or they have with the new perma cap, they have reached that. The reason that punishments are not carried across all games is mostly because that would be extraordinarily difficult to keep track of. For anyone that's tried to open the punishment docs, coming from the person that runs and owns the punishment docs, it is a little demanding. If you open it on your phone, good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fun time. I mean, it will almost certainly crash at least once trying to open it. So having all of those, imagine the 10,000 for PoT, the at least 10,000. I know there's more for Bob. I don't know how many there are for them. Take all 4 games and mash them together. We now have 30, 40,000 entries on one page.
Something else to consider too is that our docs have been trimmed down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the trimmed version.
I mean, we have a bunch of old archives ones as well. We have Isle and Arc being archived. We have, I think, Discord as well, somewhere. Yeah, somewhere.
Now, one thing I will say, I think, this is something I think the leads will agree with me on here. Should somebody get a strike in realism, and it be for something like toxicity, for example, we'll go ahead and double check to see, hey, do you have strikes for toxicity on the main server? Your permit for toxicity on the main server? Let's go ahead and let you sit with that for a minute.
I think too that people need to take into consideration, Tinker, is that realism just has a lot more to it. If somebody runs afoul of a rule there, that's there. Now, if you're going in chat and you're going to play the F around and find out game, then we'll double check. And if you want to catch that L, you'll get to.
Mm-hmm.
As well, quickly answering Huli's question, it would, in doc wise, yes, it would be Control V, Control C, but then it would also be issuing all those bans and then reaching out to all the players and saying, hey, you've been banned on our realism server as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole lot more work than just copy and pasting.
Yeah, so it's kind of like just because you get the yeet off of Bob doesn't mean you're getting the yeet off of PoT unless you just did real big goof somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because ideally, our punishment system is meant to be very forgiving because we understand mistakes happen. I have a strike. It happens. Yeah. But we don't want to push people out, but we also don't want to let people just walk all over either other players or ourselves. So, like Watch said, if you notice somebody playing the F around and find out game in chat that you know is banned, like by all means report them, and you're welcome to mention, hey, this person's been banned already on the main server for like this precise thing. Do with that information as you will, because while we usually don't escalate strikes outside of like some seriously heinous stuff, if they want to play F around, they can absolutely find out.
Ideally, the rule structure and system and how we punish was meant for people to be able to learn from them and be given the opportunity to fall in line, instead of some servers, especially way back in the day when we were just IL Legacy, there were servers out where it was 2 strikes and you were banned, like no appeal. And we didn't want that. We wanted people to be able to play, make mistakes which are inevitable, but feel like that wasn't the end of the road, and then they had to move on to a new server to call home. Now, there's bloat with that. It's just like some of the channels in Discord. There's been some suggestions about, how about a channel for this, and how about a channel for that, and a step for this and a step for that. And you have to imagine we've been around for years. And when Dog restructured this Life Finds a Way Discord, it took her, I believe, 6 days to archive the old channels before she could start revamping the look of the Discord. That also leads into some of the slowness that you see from the team. So that's just a thing that we're working on. Inevitably and always is things get slowed down. We have to try to speed it up, figure out ways where we can trim some fat.
To comment on something that Hooli just mentioned a little bit ago, it feels like the current system does not incentivize reporting a role break, knowing that whatever punishment is dished out on one server does not get carried out to the other server. Just a few questions ago, we had people saying that we were not being relaxed enough with strikes, especially with folks that have been here and have been here for a while. So this a little bit contradictory there, and not saying that you specifically are contradicting yourself, but again, another perfect example of the reason that we're a little, there's not a right answer here, is because the community is already pretty divided on how that should be handled. So rather than changing it and making, the other side of the community mad, we're going the work smarter, not harder route, having it be treated as if it's a separate game, as if it's a separate server, because it is a separate server. And just because you get a ban on semi-realism doesn't mean you get a ban on fantasy realism, and again, unless you just real big goof somewhere. Because when it comes to reporting, I'm not sure how we can incentivize reporting, because we don't want to necessarily like offer a bounty, I guess is a good way to put it, for putting in a report, because that'll cause problems in and of itself. Okay, so it's a biased misunderstanding. Isn't also more job needed to be done about linking Discord punishments or games?
Tinker,
it's not necessarily.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No,
I'll
I
wait
was just
until you're done.
on something that you had said. It's not necessarily some more work to link the two. When somebody gets a strike, they get searched in Discord anyways, because it's like, and I'm going to use you as an example, Huli, just because you're the one asking the question. If Huli gets a strike for doing something, we're going to go in and go, okay, who is this person? Who is this? Let's see here, search in Discord. Is anybody putting in, a shop request under this Alderon ID, perhaps? Oh, they are. It says Hooliga's person. Okay, cool. We know who that is. Let's go ahead and just take a quick little peek at the docs. It doesn't really add any steps that we wouldn't have already had to do anyways. The punishment there is a punishment. It's just sometimes that punishment is, hey, don't do that. Because generally people don't get many of those. And again, if you see people getting a bunch of, hey, don't do that, it's like, well, let me know. Let Watts know. Because that shouldn't be happening either.
Also, Tinker, I know that Sad Cloud has asked that question a couple of times, which is totally fine. I think you, I guess, or Tan are probably the only people that can answer that. I think Nexus left.
Yeah, I did. To kind of answer it straight out forward. when you're asking are all of the fantasy mods being tested, no, not all of them are. We aren't testing the space dinos and such, but we're considering most of the more realistic fantasy ones, such as the dragons, the more sensible things, to say. That's what
the things people
tested.
want.
Yeah, the things people want. And I would fit into what we're offering with that server as well as it at that roster.
If you want to guarantee that a certain mod is on the list for being tested, absolutely make a suggestion. Generally, we're going to base the mod testing list off of what creatures are people asking for. Are people do we see in chat, hey, is this being added? Oh, we should totally add this. Is there a new one coming out? Are people really, really hyped about something that's coming up? And then, obviously suggestions. So if we don't know anybody's interested in it, we're going to worry about the ones that we already have being tested and not going after every, cute little penguin that gets added.
Mm-hmm. And to add on to, I think we answered it earlier as well, but SadCloud's next question: why did home caves get removed? I understand that removing Waystone, but why home cave? Short, simple answer: it's the pre-established understanding of how realism service is supposed to be offered, I guess, and what they're used to. Both home caves and Waystones, neither are, I guess, realistic aspects of the profiles as well as all of the things we do offer within them. But yet again, if you really want to see them, make a suggestion, argue your point in case, and we'll consider it if the majority of the community wants it.
There is a bit of a difference in being unique and just outright going completely against the grain of what is expected in that category of thing. To give us somewhere to start, we have took the basic cookie cutter of what semi-realism. Again, we need to start calling these things something else because those two words are too similar.
Just call it
to give
fantasy
us
realism.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to, and I keep calling it semi-realism instead. The fantasy realism, we took the cookie cutter of, okay, what is a realism server generally? It is profiles, no home caves, generally not a lot of quests, so you don't really have to worry about marks because you want to focus on the roleplay aspect. Teleports ain't really a thing. Food fill up ain't really a thing. Focusing on the interaction between each other. Okay, let's take this and go, how can we make this unique from here? Well, let's do fantasy. You don't see a lot of those. Let's and what makes LFAW unique? Mix packing. Let's do that, and let's do cross packing just for the heck of it. Let's add that in too, and see what folks think, and then mix that up and see what happens. So it just was one of those things, like Tan said, that was just the norm of this type of server that we didn't think would really be wanted. But again, you want it, make a suggestion. We'll look at it. We'll look into it. We'll discuss it. See what happens.
And Halsey brings up the
You do
next
your home
point
return better.
of wouldn't we want to be unique by allowing it? And it's a bit of a double-edged sword. If we allow it, and if the community wants it, we'll do it. We're also alienating the rest of the realism community within Path of Titans as a whole, because they are used to no home cave and no Waystone. So it's a bit of a balancing scale when deciding on to include it or not. And Tinker just answered Earth Dragon's question there.
No, it absolutely can provide a different experience. This was just basically giving us somewhere to start. To kind of give you an example of what I mean by that, when we opened the Path of Titans server, I went in, I copied the IO Legacy rules, I pasted it in, and then I changed some terminology to make it make sense for Path of Titans. to just give us somewhere to start rather than starting from the absolute bottom. So similarly, we looked at what makes realism roleplay servers what they are. This, and this. Okay, well, we'll use those and to give us somewhere to start. But it can absolutely change if y'all want to see that changed.
I think something too that we're more specifically trying to do with the realism server starting and moving into the rest of our games as Life Finds a Way is sometimes things will get suggested, we'll put it in, and there's such a violent or visceral reaction to it that we make this knee-jerk decision to undo that before it's had enough time to properly sit and be tested. So we also want things to just get their time in the sun so we can see how they play out. Again, it comes back to the more bodies that we have testing the various things, the more feedback we can get, the better it ends up being.
And that's something we're fixing by our new voting system when it comes to mods, and rather big changes we want the community's input on by implementing the change for, say, 5 to 7 days, and then the voting will commence. And not have it offered up front. But yet again, Earth Dragon, make a suggestion about it. It's way easier to have it concise and in one place than throughout this chat.
Yeah, just so we can have a discussion in one spot for it. I know there's a couple people typing at the moment. One thing I did want to touch on, if we haven't touched on it already, is what it's called? The community criticism post. Have we touched on that at any point?
No, it hasn't been brought up.
One thing I did want to add about that, because there was some discussions with concerns of it being the reason it was closed. It was primarily closed because, well, first of all, it wasn't intended to be a permanent feature, because that is what suggestions are for. That was just to get the conversation started. We have a lot of avenues to let people put in their criticisms in, like, the easiest ways possible. And now, especially with these Q&As that we would like to do, scattered throughout the future. We have the suggestions channel, we have PoT General, we have the ticket system, and then you can always just DM admins. My DMs are always open. Myself, that way you are still able to have these concerns, but having them all just piled into one place, it's the same reason that when somebody says, hey, you should totally do this for the server in global chat, we say, hey, put in a suggestion, instead of just going, okay, sure, and using global chat, because that's a lot of information in one place, and that is very, very difficult to keep up with from an administrative perspective. Sorry, I just thought of that, and if I didn't say it, I would absolutely forget about it.
That's fine. Halsey also asked what mods are being tested right now for the fantasy server. Don't know them on the top of her head, and I'm unsure if we really want to reveal that, as it may be something that hasn't been suggested at all as well.
I can elaborate a little bit on the reason that we're not super forthcoming with that in the past, specifically, Halsey, is that a lot of times people would ask for a mod and a staff member would be like, oh, we're going to look at that. And then that person that was told that would get very excited and they would tell their friends about it. And they would take being looked at as it was going to come in. And that's why there's been more secrecy on what is happening. Because sometimes people will just take the fact that we're looking at it as a guarantee that it's going to come in. And that leads to, well, you all know what happens. People are very upset.
And I think one general concern already with the Dominus is it's that's the dragon that can have a ranged attack, isn't it? Maybe not. I know one of them can have a ranged attack. It breathes fire. It's the only thing in the game that can effectively do this. There's no way to defend against that type of attack by any dino.
Water. Or hope it
Yeah,
misses.
Fair, but still, it's a rather big issue, at least, that I'm thinking that we're going to need to evaluate and test specifically for that dino.
No, we're not saying it's impossible to be. It needs to be tested before we know for certain, because I don't want to say it's always a skill issue, but there have been times where we would have people say, like, every mod we add, we end up with at least 2 or 3 suggestions. This is broken. This is unbalanced. This is overpowered. When people just don't know how to fight it yet because it's new and they're not used to it. And then the MAPE. I remember when MAPE was first added and people were furious about it. And the next 2 weeks I spent fighting for my life and suggestions, just being like, please give it a chance. And then people realized how squishy they were, and then they got bullied.
Also, I don't want anybody to think that just because we're talking about its ranged attack that will be the reason it doesn't get added. We just haven't tested it yet, so we want to see what it looks like for ourselves instead of just going off of what other people are showing, because that's not always accurate either.
And as Gareth also mentioned, something that's been untouched on is if we're open to adding mutations and such to the semi-realism. Astral Arcade used to have that, to where if your dino lived for a long time, it would get a bit stronger than a dino who just became an adult. Can also get stronger by questing, but all stats go back to normal when you die or server restart.
That's really cool, but I have
it is
no
really cool. But
earthly
my
idea
first question to this is how? How would this be implemented technically wise? Because I got no fucking clue. I haven't seen a mod that does it, and I think they're doing it by their own coding. So it's not something that's public, so we can easily use it ourselves. So it's something we would need to invest both time and, honestly, most likely money on developing.
Yeah, because it could be a custom bot. And God, I ain't been on Astral Arcade in ages. I'd always ask them. Worst I can say is no, I guess. Because I do think they had a custom bot on their server, if I remember right. Again, like, grain of salt there. It's been a hot minute since I've been on that one. I think they had a custom bot. Jesus.
But
a lot of the at restarts or things like that people do reference, those generally are unique to the servers and the bots that were built for them.
Yeah, because they've had some command or something set up. Because stats are something that are editable.
You don't need to defend it, Halsey. We're looking at it. We're not saying no by any means.
No, not at all. I would love it. Are you kidding? Dragons? Yes, please. That is, when we were talking about the realism server, the first thing, and you can ask Watts or Tan, because I believe they were both there for this, when we were like, fantasy perhaps, I beat on my desk and I said, please give me dragons. I want dragons so bad.
Dude,
because
dragons are cool as
I
well.
really like the dragon mod.
Draco Viper and Dominus are both being looked at.
Yes.
So is the Glow Plume, I believe, as soon as it gets updated.
Yep. We're waiting on Glow Plume to update. The Draco Viper was tested it was either almost finished or was finished pre-update, but we have to make sure that nothing changed on it. So we're going to take a little peek at it just to be sure, because we don't want another trope situation where we think it's good and then, surprise, it's not.
I don't even know what that is, Halsey. Can you link it to me?
Isn't it that the big herbivore bat that can heal people?
Which one?
No, Gigamandra. No!
Gigamandra.
It's the other one,
No.
the herbivore that is semi-aquatic.
The moose?
Yeah, it's no. It's a flat thing. Yeah, it's like a lizard. Yeah, it's a very, very flattened lizard.
Oh, the boomerang head.
Maybe.
So it's not
I don't know.
The gangster lizard with the cobra hood.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
with the cobra hood. Not the platypus
Huli
thing.
puts it very nicely. Gigamandra looks like a prehistoric platypus with evolution issues.
Yeah, the
that
platypus
one.
thing.
The one the Blizzard
Okay,
just sent
that
a
thing is
picture
really
of.
cute, but
Platypuses
man,
sweat milk. You're welcome.
Yes, they do.
also venomous.
The
Uh,
males are.
anyways, when it comes to specific mods, if you want a mod tested, the only way that I can promise you it will be tested is if you put in a suggestion. If somebody
Yep.
suggests, hey, I want to see this goofy ass looking alien mod, we'll test it. We'll see what happens. You know, maybe. That's part of the perks of having a server that we do fantasy mods on too. Maybe. But we got to make sure it's not busted, and we got to make sure folks want to see it first. But if you want it tested, put in a suggestion. Because worst case scenario, we're going to say, yep, it's on the list. Thank you. And then, hey, you know. Somebody else said something.
We know there is a playable fighter jet.
There's a playable fighter jet?
Yeah, it's one of the space alien dinos.
That's wild.
Yeah. And that's what I mentioned earlier about it doesn't make sense to have that in the server, so it's
All right, so hear me out,
looking
Tam.
to test. No.
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 My God. Listen, I know this
I
is
love
not going to
fighter
outright shut
jets as
anything
much as the
down.
next
No.
person, but no.
That dreaded sentence on the list. I know y'all hate saying that. I hate hearing that, and I am sorry. We're working on getting that quicker.
I also saw a comment previously. I don't know if you saw this, Tinker. I think it was from Earth about a channel of the mods that are being looked at.
I also thought of just now like a thread in somewhere of the suggestion of the realism part of the server. Specifically for the ones we're testing for that server.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not against it, and then maybe what the mod team can do is when that specific mod is being looked at, it just has eyes. And it could be a low-key way for the community to kind of know where we're at.
I like that. Actually, let me add that to my list.
Yeah.
Oh, go away, iCloud.
I mean, I think there's a flying space penguin somewhere as a mod as well, so...
All right. I would love to continue
one,
talking to all of you and interrupting Tinker because bullying her is my favorite thing to do ever.
Help.
But my wife made food, and that's more important than this. Have a wonderful night.
Valid, to be honest. That sounds delicious. Have a good night, hon. Here's some admin documents and newbie guidelines. Ooh. You send that over whenever it's done, Earth. And I'll take a little peeky peek at it. I am down a PC, but I do still have an iPad and a phone, so y'all can't get rid of me that easy. You think I won't be in suggestions just because my PC died?
I mean,
Joke's on you, I'll be in there. Hey. We got any other? Let's silence Tinker real quick. No! You can't get rid of me that easy. I've been here since 2020, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Break the phone next time, too. I got sabotage.
I didn't think of that, Steve.
Do we have
think of it next time.
Do you have any other questions? Anything? Realism? Semi-realism? LFAW?
Also, to remind everyone, you can request to be brought up to speak out your question if you don't want it to be typed. Or don't want to type it.
Oh, Penguin, my beloved. I love him. He's so cute. He had some goofy animations last time I played it, but he is so cute. Because if I can get on the same page with a lot of stuff, same. I know I missed the first part, but...
Yeah, shame on you.
I was stuck at work. I would have rather been literally anywhere else.
Not acceptable.
Sorry, real life job at dinosaur game needs me. Licky flying Kirby bat for realism win. Put in a suggestion. We have the Healy crab. I'm not against the licky flying Herbie bat. Is that what you called it? Yeah. Just if y'all can hear the dog snoring, I am so sorry.
No, we can't.
He is sucking a paint off the wall, just curled up in my lap right now. Yeah. Is it the list official for everyone on Discord to see?
No.
The list we were just talking about? It will be.
Yeah.
Once we get it wrote. What is that?
What the fuck? No thanks. Looked like a ramp
Angry
beak
flamingo?
on the theory body.
No, Edward Scissorhands had a child with a ramp.
Yeah.
He's cute though. Spider-Mon, please. Listen, I like the Spider-Mon, but there is the concern of folks with severe arachnophobia, and we don't want to run them off. I'm not saying it's out of the question, but you see the reaction in chat here.
When it comes to phobias, I think we also need to keep that in mind when adding things to the server.
Yeah. As cool as it is, from a spider lover myself, as cool as it is, I understand, Halsey. Listen, I get it. I get it, Earth. I get it. They're little guys with their little faces and their little hands. I love them, but still, you're the scariest thing in literally every game. I already fear the AI spiders. Ain't there an arachnophobia option?
Maybe. Don't know.
If I'm not mistaken? Yeah, there is. Oh, there is. Paradox just learned about that. I was like, what? Oh, bless your heart, honey. Oh my god, dog. What are we doing? Hang on, I can't see chat for a second. The 60-pound that thinks he's a lap dog is trying to crawl into my skin at the moment. I beg of you, sit down. Okay, now I can see again. Mere spiders look like square pixels. Does it really?
That's kind of hilarious, though.
I mean, yeah, I guess if you want to know they're there. Be nice if people could see all the dinos being tested and what stage of testing it's at. So what stage wouldn't necessarily work? Because it's either the one being tested or it's not. So like the eyes thing, like Watts mentioned, we could totally do that. But that would be the quote unquote stage that it's at. Is it either has eyes or it don't. False sense that it's coming. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, eyes are more communication. Can we get the meat square? No.
No. You got it for April Fools, but that's it.
Yeah, it was funny, hee hee ha ha while it lasted, but meat cube. Absolutely not. The squelching sound alone that thing made me want to uninstall the game. I hated that noise. Its nest was cute. I liked its nest, but that sound made me angry. I don't know how to explain it. Make a suggestion, Hooli. Make a suggestion. Was in Switch Shell? Oh, I'm sorry, Paradox. Watch Dominus get pounced by 4 cubes. You want to talk about realism? That right there is paleo accurate. A dragon getting pounced by meat cubes? You get me a paleontologist that'll prove that wrong.
But
do we have any other questions tonight?
Yeah, I was gonna
Sorry,
say,
Dan.
to kind of further this point and the point of this meeting. Do we have any further questions, either texted or brought up through voice? If anyone feels daring enough to join us.
We're getting down to the last handful of folks in here, anyways. But
I mean, it's been 3 hours.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming, though.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely love seeing the discussion happen. Same time next week. Listen.
No.
As fun as that sounds, I'll hop into a VC with players anytime, to be honest. I can't promise it'll be a full-on Q&A format, but I don't mind to be summoned to help desk every now and again.
Yeah, I think we could do this, I mean, on a semi-regular basis, just to touch base with the community a bit
monthly. Not to put it in stone. That's not in stone.
Yeah,
don't quote me on that.
Maybe not even monthly, but maybe like every 2 or 3 or 4 months to kind of touch base on everything.
You can have the name of the sign.
But it's something
that's not a bad idea, but that's still, it's either being tested or it's not being tested. And so for the sake of simplicity, just having, eyes next to it or not next to it would basically tell you that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is going to be a lovely video for people to watch through. An in-game clock can already be done. At this moment, we at least don't see a use for it. The QnA usually, well, that's the whole point why we decided to hold one, to clear up the misunderstandings and show what we're thinking about talking about. Maybe not next week, but hit me up in 6 months. Honestly, yeah. Okay, there goes Tinker. Yeah, I agree, Cloud. That's honestly the main point of the list itself, to avoid also double suggestions of mods. And from the sounds of that, the discussion has been happening here, we're most likely going to make one. But yet again, no quoting. Yes, Dino has been suggested 10 times, but due to its versatility on both land and water, it wasn't considered an option on the semi-realism one. But on the realism one, we are considering it an option. We just need and want to test it and flesh out its profile fully. And make sure it's not... Hello? Are you back from the dead?
Sorry, my mobile Discord told me to go fuck myself.
Oh. So like per usual then.
Yeah.
But
I don't know where
it's
it's
more
coming
OP
off on that.
in the
So.
way that it can grab more and have a higher combat rate, but it's also nerfed in the way that it can't go on land. But yet again, if you think it's that big of a problem or issue, you're more than welcome to make a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
It can barely go on land, but it can still go on land, and that's the key difference.
Deinosuchus, another big reason that it hasn't been added, like unbalanced aside, is that's one of those that the community was so split on. Because like half the folks that enjoy semi-aquatic or aquatic species were like, yes, give me big alligator. And then the people that didn't were like, no murder gator, please. So we were kind of like, okay, which community? People wanted aquatics. I know people want aquatics, but there are aquatics and they're not played. Even when they were first added, we had, and this is speaking from a literal bird's eye view, inspectate name tags on seeing what and where people were. They were barely used. Don't get me wrong, there are a handful of people. Who's the one Kai main that I refuse to drink at GP River if they're online? Like, absolutely not. Yeah, no, you're not catching me at GP if I see that name in the social list. Absolutely not. But that's pretty much it.
All right, Maya, take care.
I mean, we just did a fully aquatic vote because people were starting to say, "Hey, we want aquatics." So we said, "Okay, here's aquatics."
Mm-hmm.
Once we got the testing done, of course, because that was again something that players were like, "Hey, we want to see this." So we said, "You know what?
Fair point.
Fair enough. Here you
go." Mosa got removed due to the body bug, but I think it has been fixed since, and we just want to double check that it actually is fixed.
When that suggestion was originally put in Halsey, at that time there really wasn't enough people interested in aquatics to justify bringing it in when there were mods that people wanted to see more.
Mm-hmm.
So the mods that the majority of people wanted to see just simply took priority over those fully aquatic mods. Mobile Discord, don't you dare.
Mobile Discord, fucking do it.
I saw it flash out of the corner of my eye. I'm the ultimate iPad kid. I've got my phone up and my iPad up right now.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Just so I can watch chat and still be in the call and not have to tab and yeah. Also for the sake of my battery. So you're paying, yeah, cries.
Yeah, imagine having a PC crashing out on there.
I'm having a PC crashing out on you. It's a wild concept to hear we don't want to add aquatics because people don't play aquatics when the only two available can't fight to save their lives. That the play style. I mean, we add mods that people want to see, so there just wasn't really demand for it. And again, at the time, that has since changed, obviously, with the newest mod vote, all that fun stuff. And I don't agree that they can't fight to save their lives. They are a very hard thing to fight with. Don't get me wrong. You ain't catching me on a Kai anytime soon. But those are one of those dinos that if you know how to use it, you're scary.
Yeah. A good Kai player will mess over a good Sarko player anytime.
Oh, yeah. Watching them absolutely bully Sarkos.
Alright, take care, Blizzard.
Have a good night, Blizz. He was dead and a lot of greed. More and more went on. We actually did need to spice up the lakes and oceans. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was just people saying, like, hey, we don't we don't need it because there's nothing to do anyways. And then over time, in more recent months, people are saying, actually, let's try it and see what happens. And so, and well, now we have it. Any other questions or anything? Generally POT related?
Because if we're just spitballing here, I think we could round it out.
Mm-hmm. It's getting late. I'm getting hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Stop calling my name right now. Screw the ocean.
No, I want to go in the ocean.
You do that. You pay me enough. Any questions? All right. I'm going once. Any other questions? To had higher tier dinos. I mean, if they exist.
I mean, we have tier 6. I mean,
we have
if you
sixes for now.
really wanted to, I can force the Campto to take up 100 slots.
Yeah, so we can always go ahead and just upgrade that. Throw some, 15,000 combat weight on Campto and make them a tier 8 or something.
Mm-hmm. The issue with
Argent was hella busted.
It was both busted as well as it caused a lot of server side lag, and then that affected.
No, that's what I mean.
Affected everyone.
It was coding busted. It was a strong sauropod because it was a massive sauropod. Obviously, it's going to be strong. I don't think it was I don't think it was unbalanced in regards to what it is. It was just purely like technical side. It just caused too many server problems.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you have a mod in mind that's higher tier, by all means, again, make a suggestion.
Yet again, I think Novania is being tested. I don't have the list in front of me, but if it's not on there, I'll throw it on there myself. Argent caused the lag when it was primarily a ragdoll entity.
Yeah.
The
It's ragdoll
dino
kind of broke
itself, when it was played, wasn't that bad, but the ragdoll entity was. But if they have it today, the mod may have gotten updated and tweaked and optimized to where it doesn't impact the server performance to such great extent anymore.
Put in a suggestion.
I was going to say, Halsey, I have one answer to you. Put in a suggestion. Because I would
the best
love to
ragdolls
see
is when
the
you come into
Argent.
render of it and you just get scooting.
Dude, I saw that happen with the Argent ragdoll once. Flew into the crater and just plopped into the fucking sky.
No, my favorite ragdoll, Argent ragdoll that I seen was when it was during the peak of the lag problem, and it had bugged under the ground for me, and all I saw was its head sticking out, and its little noodle neck was just going above the ground. I had a clip of it for a while, and it was the funniest thing I've ever witnessed. Because I'm just like, does anybody else see this? Anybody else was like, the Argent body? And I'm like, sure. No, yeah, it was that was a because that is what sound I imagined that it would make with the way that it was moving. But you know, ragdoll physics in general those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like killing something on the side of crater, just watching it slowly slide away from you while you're desperately like, please, please, I need a chunk, please. Have a good night, Halsey. Thank you for joining. Does anybody else have any other questions?
If not, I think we're gonna.
There's only a handful of folks left, but
yeah. But I think they left because they were satisfied with what they had received.
Yep, going once.
Going twice.
Twice. I reckon that's it. Oh my gosh, Hulu banned.